Okay, hi. Hello.
Hi.
Whoa.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Well,
What's going on?
Nothing much. How are you?
We're doing good.
I need to start streaming to our Discord as well. Always forget. There's just so many steps. I'm just such like, you have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under as the producer. I don't think I get enough appreciation. I just want to let everyone know.
Whatever. Okay.
We'll try. We'll step it up a little bit. We'll appreciate you more. I believe we can do that.
Well, you didn't discuss that with me, Tim. I'm fine.
Sorry, we needed to vote on that.
It's a workplace democracy, and I vote no.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, hi everyone. Hi chat.
Hey, everyone.
And hi co-hosts. And welcome everyone to the 10th episode of Red Planet. I'm of course your host, Bad Bunny. I will be rebranding soon. Soon. All right?
Soon.
It's gonna happen. I know I keep saying it. It's gonna happen though. And of course, we're joined by DJ Mule and Conquest of Dread. And Sophie is unfortunately unable to be with us today. So can we get some Let's
get some loves. Let's get some love.
Yeah.
Get some love in the
Sophie,
chat for Sophie.
She's in a bit of a bad way with the old Rona and stuff. So
yeah, she is Corona, and it's like a whole fucking thing. So it always terrifies me when my friends get coronavirus, because it's just like, I mean, obviously it's just, I've somehow still dodged it.
Me too.
You really? Okay, who else has gotten it?
Yeah, I've not had it.
Chat, press 1 if you've had, to your knowledge, have caught the Rona, and press 0 if you haven't yet gotten it. I would like to see.
Okay.
All right. Okay, that's good.
0,
Yeah, I expect that from Twitch chat, to be honest. I expect that from Twitchers.
Lots of people saying that they just stay inside and that they're hermits.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah.
And like that's what you should be doing. You really should be doing that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
so much. I really appreciate
these
that.
fucking governments would get their shit together and pay people to stay at home. I feel like, I was just saying to Mule beforehand, where in New Zealand we're currently having probably our biggest the latest kind of Omicron variant is the first to really kind of take hold in New Zealand. The rest hasn't been as bad as a lot of other places because we were having lockdowns, people getting paid to stay home, all that kind of stuff. But then with this latest one, they've kind of been a little bit more like, fuck it, just deal with it. Just everyone go to work and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't need to isolate unless this, blah, 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 whatever. And it's like we've got just thousands of cases every day, and it's
Is it really gone to thousands of cases every day?
Yeah. And for so long we were only getting literally you could count the cases on one hand.
Yeah.
And now it's
I thought
we get 12,000 new a day or something.
Yeah, I thought that y'all basically got rid of it, and now it sounds like shit is just garbage over there. Which
so we
sucks.
had
hold up a second.
down to 0 for all the other variants, like all the regular like Delta and all that kind of stuff. But then it's this Omicron one
How much of that do you think is related to that fucking Corona anti-vaxxer protest you were telling us about? Because you said that they were trying to infect people, right? That's what they were trying to do.
I mean, so no, there were people there saying that they were intentionally going to infect people, but I think that is a minority in there. That's kind of like a weird extremist kind of element. I think the majority of people there probably either didn't believe it was a thing, or believed that it was, a lot milder than it actually is, or, they believed in it, but they were anti-vaccination because they believed some bullshit about that too, whatever. But there was a lot of spread there, and a lot of the movement, their kind of movement leaders or whatever, have come down with coronavirus since. And so, last time we looked at that news story. No, so last time, we looked at that news story about the radiation weaponry that they were convinced was being aimed at them. So they're literally they're doing these Facebook Lives with all their fans, and they're coughing and, all this kind of stuff. And they're obviously have all the symptoms of coronavirus, and they're talking about how, you know, like, oh, I think it was the energy weapons, or, you know, just shit like that. It's like,
no, bro, you got sick. It's like so much more likely that you got sick, even if you don't believe in coronavirus. Like maybe you just got flu. Like it's so absurd.
Exactly. It's so wild to jump immediately to energy weapons as opposed to just, you know, like, oh, maybe it's another kind of flu or something like that. It's like, no.
People just say anything.
Weapons.
It's always rich. I mean, this is like a tired criticism, but it still doesn't ever cease to be real. These so-called free thinkers, the ones that pride themselves on not being held strict to any sort of worldview, because they're just a bunch of super free thinkers that are not influenced by anything, but they all magically ignore some very obvious first steps. Like when if you're getting sick, if you feel sick, the first thing you think of shouldn't be an energy weapon. If you do, I feel like you are really not a free thinker, in fact. But these people are like insist that they're free thinkers.
It's like they're like anti-mainstream media because it's controlled by the government, and then they're like, I only get my information, my facts from social media that's controlled by private corporations. You know, it's like, your thoughts are so fucking free right now. They're just they're so free.
Third eye's wide open, so perceptive.
This is also like somewhat related to the fan of like a toxic content creator, whoever it may be. If you were asked them, like, you say that they're a fan of so and so, they'll say no, they're not a fan. They'll insist that they're not a fan because being a fan means that they're not a free thinker, and it also means that they're like submissive to another man, and that's not like alpha or whatever or sigma or something. And so like this is a very this is like extremely common. If there are people like men that are fans of other men that spout political stuff, and then you're like, you're a fan of this person, that's why you're saying this. Like, I'm not a fan. No. I just, I'm allowed to like watch people.
I admire him as an equal.
Right, yeah. They watch them and they just, I watch people I don't agree with fully. I do it all the time. It's, in fact, you should do it. And so that's their reading goal.
Man, get your shit together. What the fuck are you doing? Jesus Christ. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. Oh my God.
It is. Yeah, so, now that we're all...
Start up.
We're all into it. Should we...
Oh, wait, we should do our picture.
It's time for the picture.
And then one of you posted on the Red Planet Twitter. Okay? What the hell is this?
This is my picture. It's me.
All right. Is that we're doing this then?
All right. Okay, we got it.
We did?
I never want to see that again. That was the worst.
Someone literally in chat said, "Put it away."
That was horrible. But
wait, I've got filters too. I can do it. Wait, here we go.
That wasn't even a filter. That was just a scooped thing that I made with like a PNG. Oh, I love that. Okay, good. Tim, you need to do that. Right, do it again. Do it again.
Wait, are we doing it again? Okay.
Doing it again. Tim's got a filter on.
Right.
I'm the only normal one.
Can you not make yourself?
I'm holding this thing up all by myself. I'm the only credible, like, wow. When this whole
the only adult here.
When I'm the only adult in the room. My God. Okay, well, I'm gonna put up.
What does that say about the room?
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Nicole.
Exactly. Well, I'm gonna put up a few. I just put up 3, 4.
Brilliant. Okay, shall I post that?
I think yeah. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Brilliant.
Are you able to do the Red Planet Twitter mule?
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, cool.
No problem.
I'm just not signed into it. No. Yeah. Can't remember the thing.
Okay, brilliant.
Cool.
I got it.
The last one probably is best.
Yes, it is.
And when I say best, I don't mean that. I mean, whatever the word is for that.
Oh, it's okay. Look, everyone's looking out for you. You got people in the chat saying we're here to support you. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I forgot to do a thing. Oh, okay, so I apologize to everyone who was looking for subtitles for the stream. I forgot to set it up again.
My fault as well.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I forgot because what I need to do is because their audio doesn't come through my microphone, but in fact comes through a different way. I have to pipe their audio through a program to be able to have subtitles for everyone on screen. And I've failed to do that this week, and I apologize. I will make sure it happens for next week. So
let's all just make it the top of our priority. Yeah.
Here's the thing. This is not an optimal situation, but these episodes do get uploaded to my YouTube, and YouTube puts auto like subtitles, so that's a quote unquote fix in the interim. But I sincerely apologize. I will be on the subtitle game, and that'll be the next episode. We'll have them set up, hopefully, unless something dramatic happens. So
yeah, defo.
Although I will be moving, chat. I'm moving at the end of this month, so we'll see what happens. Yeah. Hopefully, it doesn't interfere with any of the episodes.
That'll be cool. I'm sure we can figure something out. But yeah, so should we get into some news and stuff?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So I popped a couple things in the notes. It's all kind of like, it's all union and strike related this week, which is kind of,
that's dope.
It's good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off with got this one: striking workers at large Auckland pallet supplier win new agreement. So this is down here in Auckland, New Zealand, and so at the CHEP, so CHEP, CHEP is their Auckland, just the Auckland location. It's a big multinational pallet supplier, for like shipping goods around the pallets. So they've been like super busy all through the whole pandemic thing because of the reliance on shipping and supply lines and all that kind of stuff. And they've been overworked. They get paid barely anything, whatever. It's most of their workers are like Pacific immigrants who are most of the employees there come from a background in they come from poorer areas and things like that, and they are just like a group that it's like that thing that gets classed as unskilled labor, so they always get taken advantage of. But, there's no such thing as unskilled labor. Everyone here knows that, whatever. It's just, like they're seen as kind of like an expendable workforce or whatever. But, so the CHEP workers, the first union members, were actually able to prove that maybe they're not so expendable because they went on an indefinite strike. And it went on, I can't remember exactly how long it went on. It was like, maybe it was like, I think it was like a week or two. They started by just doing like one day at a time, like last month. But but then they got everything they asked for. They got pay increases. So they went from being like at like minimum wage all the way up to at minimum a living wage. Some of them even higher.
Sweet.
They get their wages get back paid to the pay rise. So for hours that they've already worked, since they started kind of bargaining or whatever, they get paid. So they're locked in further increases down the track over the year as well. So they're going to be getting, like pay rises and things like that. And also everyone that striked gets like a sign-on bonus as well. So that's really awesome as well. That and First Union were able to help them negotiate for that. So it's kind of like, when you like it's not always like an attractive idea to a worker, especially if you're seen as expendable or whatever, to join in on a strike action, whatever like that. But I think being able to bargain for things like that, like the sign-on bonuses for people that engaged in the strike and stuff, is actually like like a pretty cool thing to be like, actually, if we do this, we're not just going to get paid for the time that we didn't work or whatever, but we're going to get a bonus as well and stuff. So that was really cool. And it was like, I think all of the striking members were all Samoan as well. So like typically I would say a pretty stepped on group in terms of like I would say like low wage employment and stuff, like it's kind of like, yeah. Like, I mean, and this is all Pacifica immigrants to New Zealand. There is like a huge shitty kind of thing there with the way that New Zealand kind of uses uses like the Pacific labor force, specifically people that move over from the islands and are like sending money back to their families at home and stuff. We can probably even touch on a lot of that when we're talking about imperialism later. There's a lot of like Pacific imperialism from New Zealand that kind of captures a lot of these smaller nations as like like a captive labor force, and also for like extraction and stuff like that, like so many resources. There's New Zealand definitely would not be the way it is now or have anything that it does. Well, it just would not be the same place without various extraction projects all over the Pacific. So so that's the first thing. So awesome to all the great work to all the CHIP workers and First Union who helped them with that.
Solidarity.
Yeah. I think that's pretty awesome. There was a lot of, in kind of New Zealand Twitter, there was a lot of stuff going around. Twitter, people donating to their strike fund and all that kind of stuff. So it's awesome to see that come through. And what do we got next? We got
New York Times tech workers. Do you want to read? You can read all these if you want, Tim. I don't mind.
Oh, you can you can do this one if you want.
I'll give it a go. All
right, let's go.
Okay, right, here we go. Are you ready for this one? Oh,
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. New York Times tech workers vote to certify union. Now, I think that this is a really important union vote, right? Because tech workers tend to really have a shit time in general, and there's not a lot of unions that support them, right? It says here the ratification, which about 8% of ballots in favor, make it the largest tech union in the United States with collective bargaining rights. Oh, okay, so I might be wrong about that. There is some tech unions, but I think
So the thing is, like, for collective bargaining rights and stuff, you actually have to get approved by it's like the NLRB, the National Labor Review Board. So you can form a union, and your workplace can like recognize your union and stuff, but to technically have the collective bargaining rights and stuff, you have to kind of you need to signed up with the NLRB and be approved by them. And that's like a whole other process. But anyway, sorry.
No, you're fine. Tech workers at the New York Times on Thursday voted in favor of certifying their union in a National Labor Relations Board election, making it one of the biggest tech unions in America. The workers voted in favor 404 to 88, which is that's pretty big. Those 88 workers, I don't know, they must just really like, I don't know, licking boot or whatever, just weird. Or maybe that, I don't know. Obviously, I'm being a bit flippant here. There's every chance that they could have been targeted by anti-union, union.
Yeah, well, like that. We had a big teachers strike here a little while back, and there were teachers that were anti-union and stuff, and they were on the news saying, because they interview the anti-union people on the news, right? And they were, saying they were like, oh, I just think that I could like bargain better for myself instead of, like signing up. I don't want to pay union fees and shit, which is like all kind of like garbage or whatever. But there are people out there that do hold those views.
They're free thinkers.
They're wrong.
Free thinkers,
yeah.
That's right.
But no, but there are people out there that might be opposed to it for various reasons or whatever. But
So, let me get into this. I'm sorry, I have to get around this New York Times bullshit. Okay, I'm here. We're just elated and really soaking in what this means, not only for us as tech workers at the Times and for the New York Times, but also for the tech industry as a whole, said Nozli Samadzadeh, a senior software engineer. I think this is going to be the start of a wave of organizing in the tech industry. I think that's what I was thinking about before when I said like it's rare to get like a tech industry based union, because I've had like people in my chat before be like, yo, I work in like tech and it's really shit for unions, and we get literally overwhelmed by the hours that we have to work and stuff, and I actually know someone in my community who was on call like literally all night on Saturday night, and he was so fucking pissed off like about like the pay and stuff. He was like saying, I hope the fucking pay is worth it. So really important for the tech industry. Ms. Samadzadeh said the union was eager to bargain a contract around issues similar to what the newsroom unit has been fighting for. Issues around pay, diversity, and equity. A strong contract to make our workplace more fair. Danielle Rotar, a Times spokeswoman, said the Times look forward to working with the union to establish a contract. Interesting choice of words. We're looking forward to working with the union. Okay, all right. That's, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah.
We continue to believe this election process was critical, so our colleagues could learn more about the union, hear both sides of the argument, and ultimately make an informed decision, she said. So that's all sounding really good. It's they got a huge amount of bargaining rights there. It's like an overwhelming vote. That the time it's saying here, Times management has violated federal workplace laws by preventing some employees from showing support for the union as well. So there you go. I was kind of right about those 88 people there. It's they're obviously they've been targeted by or they've been prevented from showing support. Like, I don't know, maybe they've been forced to, because companies do all sorts of shady shit, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you'll go into like training for a business. Like when years and years ago, I worked at an ISP for a little while in Australia, and when we had our like induction training and stuff, they played us like an anti-union video. It was like, if someone comes up and talks to you about this kind of stuff, tell your manager. And all this shit. And this was like seen as a pretty like progressive business, So it's like they do kind of make it part of the kind of culture to be anti-union or whatever. And
not to mention that anti-union is kind of like the status quo for the world. Like some areas of the world are more than others, right? But like generally, I mean, capitalism exists everywhere. And it's, with the exception of maybe a few countries, I would imagine that they're pretty heavily anti-union. So regardless of the specific training videos, I think there's also just your indoctrination into a capitalist society and how that naturally lends itself to be this anti-union thing. I don't know if anyone in chat, I think a lot of you have seen it because you have shown it to you, but if you're not familiar with this type of like anti-union training, I'm sure the workers, like you described, workers receive it, but like management also receives it to like, I know that Amazon management like video was leaked onto YouTube, and it showed some really it's really disgusting, but it's also unfortunately the standard for how capitalism operates, and that managers are expected to like keep note of who their workers are socializing with, and if you see them socializing with some other people, then you make sure you like take a note on that. If you hear them saying things like living wage or something about like rights or something, that you need to like take note of that. And like, so there's all these indicators that your management is trying to look for. And then there's also the workers that are taught, hey, unions don't help you, unions hurt you. And then there's also like the actual direct anti-union actions of firing a union organizer or firing people that are talking about unionizing. So, and then there's the fact that, we need money to live, and a lot of us don't have the luxury of being fired. So there's a lot of pressures everywhere. So it doesn't have to be specifically someone got to a person and that's why they didn't join a union. I think it's just the entire climate of capitalism lends people, gives people this sense of, no, maybe I shouldn't join a union.
Yeah. And I think in tech circles as well, there's like, especially like when you start getting into like games and startups and stuff, there's a lot of like libertarian kind of bullshit going on there that a lot of people have to deal with. And I mean, like, it's actually, speaking of tech unions and stuff like that, like the games industry has been like efforts to unionize the games industry has been like fucking wild. Like for years and years, like there's been so many attempts, like going back decades, people trying to unionize at like EA and like, like Blizzard and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, like they get serious anti-union propaganda just like at every level of the company, and it's like, it's one of those things where as an employee, if you're watching this shit, you're gonna be like thinking, man, like, why is it that my bosses hate this stuff so much? Like, what is it? Yeah, like what are they? What secrets are they trying to prevent me from? It's like a mystery, like in a TV show or something like that. You'd be like a little bit intrigued. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's kind of weird how like you might just be going through like a normal induction. They're telling you like the health and safety and and then like kind of like an anti-Donna style skit. A guy just comes out and goes, "Don't ever join a union. Don't let me ever catch you joining a union." you know.
Yeah, I remember the one that I got when I was working for this ISP in Australia was they were literally talking about hazards around the workplace. So like, okay, if there's like a power cable hanging from the roof and it's sparking and all this kind of shit like that, and then it's like, oh, what if someone approaches you about joining a union? It's like, okay, all right, is that how dangerous? Like, is that the same thing?
That's what it is.
Like, completely different thing, you know.
It could give you an electric shock joining a union.
I know, yeah. That's what happens.
It happened to me like, as soon as I donated my first
union meeting. Everyone holds hands. You stand in a circle, and then the people at both ends they just grab the sparking cable.
Yeah,
and everyone gets shocked together, and that's what communism is.
That's why it's called a union. Yeah, because it's all together at once.
I kind of want to. I know it's from Rob Rousseau, so there's that angle, but I kind of want to see this video that he.
We're shouting out Rob already.
I know, it's already.
Like half an hour in.
I know.
Yeah.
It says genuine corporate anti-union propaganda is indistinguishable from parody, and I think this is for Walmart, and I kind of want to watch this real fast. It's only 2 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's watch it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right.
Russell, I was just telling Julie and Dane here, the Walmart listens to our associates.
Sure does. Mr. Walton said over and over again, listen to our associates. They are our best idea generators.
Huh. Hey, Russell, you ever had an idea they went for?
Not yet. Donna has.
Yeah, but she's management.
Well, she wasn't management when she hit on a way to reorganize our receiving paperwork. She was a stalker then.
Not too long ago either.
Now we're using her way in every Walmart. Right, Donna?
Right. You see, the company wants to hear new ideas. For instance, the people greeters in our stores who make customers feel welcome, that was an associate's idea.
It sounds like employees, associates, they're listened to.
And without going through union politicians.
Of course not. You see, management recognizes our associates. We know that our associates' ideas are good. Associates even came up with suggestions about our work schedules.
And they use some of them right away.
Russell, you know of any union that works like that?
Of course not. All unions work at is taking a cut out of my pay.
Yeah, take your money and spend it to help in political campaigns. You know, help people I don't even vote for.
Yeah, me too. But they're never gonna do that to me again.
You were in a union?
Yep, but no more. You see, I'm one of the hundreds of thousands of former union workers, or members. I'm one of the thousands of reasons unions are getting so much smaller.
Well, Dane was in a union too.
Yeah, I was in a union. You know, where I worked, union rules made it so we couldn't even rush a shipment. You know, we kept on losing customers and money till the truck line shut down. You know, a lot of jobs, more union jobs, they're all gone.
You people at the truck line, you voted for a union.
Voted for a union? No, there never was a vote. The union got enough cards signed and demanded the company recognize the union without an election.
Without an election? I mean, didn't you have cards to sign saying that you wanted a union election?
Yeah, and I signed a card just to get them off my back. You know, I thought there had to be a vote, and I'd vote no, but I sure got fooled.
Man. That happened.
Like 20 seconds behind.
Yeah, they didn't allow us to.
That associate was Barack
I like how
Obama.
They're complaining about how like the unions stopped us from overworking ourselves, and so that led to bad things, and so that's why unions are bad, because we should be able to overwork employees and make money for the company, or else like the idea, what this is, I mean, there's so much to criticize here, but one of my favorite things here is that the employees keep recognizing the company they work for as like their company, and like our company can't make money, our company is gonna go out of business with all these. It's like, no, that you gotta stop thinking that way. And by the way, later on in our imperialism talk, I know we'll touch on it, but y'all have to stop thinking you're also the state. You're not the state.
Oh,
and you're
God.
not the company.
Holy shit. And yeah, absolutely. And also stop thinking that other people are representations of the state in their country as well. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, a state is an idea. It's not people, you know what I mean? It's none of us. We literally aren't a state. It's an absurd concept like money, right? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So
let's do the next
what's
story,
the next one?
I think.
Oh right, yeah, the Musk one. So yeah, so Musk
I didn't know
tweeted
about
out.
this.
this was like just like last week or whatever. You know, like so the UAW, the United Auto Workers, he actually said, he was like, yeah, come down, you know, like come on and have a vote and see, you know, if you're gonna unionize or whatever like that. Like, come on, feel free, sort of thing. Like the super like positive, like I invite them to come on down, which is like totally at odds with his, you know, like his fucking life of anti-union kind of work. So they've been trying for a long time, the UAW, whatever, to get like a presence in a lot of Tesla factories, well, plants, whatever they call them. But yeah, it's like it's been going for a long time. He's been kind of hamstringing them at every step, just like, I mean, with every other kind of union that's ever tried to like set up within 6 feet of Elon Musk. But so there's all the stuff that's been going on. Just recently there was all that stuff about like the racism, the homophobia, all that kind of stuff all throughout Tesla. So they're saying that they want to kind of, you know, like they want to make it a less hostile workplace. They want to bargain for, you know, they want to be able to bargain for better pay, all that kind of stuff, which, you know, Musk has kind of denied them. But so it kind of, I feel like from him, it's just like this move where he's trying to put on a face of, you know, being like the cool tech guy or whatever, being a little bit more agreeable, being like, I'm not anti-union, like, come on down. But let's see.
He is so
anti-union. Yeah, exactly. Let's see how, like, what he actually does.
And by the way,
I think they only need like 30% to actually become, you know, like a unionized workplace or whatever. But which I don't think is like very, like, that's, you know, I feel like that would probably be pretty easy. But so I don't know, like, I think like all the experts are saying that they think that it'll probably get done, you know, if they actually do get in there, get people to sign the cards and stuff, it'll happen. But we'll see. He's probably gonna invent some way to try and stop it from happening or whatever. But
it's really frustrating.
I don't know, I think it would be good though if they do actually get the chance to do it, and they can start unionizing all these fucking, you know, all these Tesla death factories or whatever. But yeah, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. One of the frustrating things about this is that this is kind of the preferential treatment that these assholes get, is that, like, it's similar to like philanthropic shit that they'll do. Well, they will do awful thing after awful thing after awful thing after awful thing, and then they will then send 5 laptops to a school or something, or they'll do this gesture here. And this is the thing that I'm sure, if anyone ever says, hey, Elon Musk is anti-worker, anti-union, I'm sure some Musk head is gonna be like, actually, how could he be if this? How? And that's gonna be their garbage line. I hope it's not, because it's gonna be very annoying, but
yeah. I feel like Musk like breeds a really particular kind of weirdo. Like, you know, like this, like, kind of like the Elon Musk fans are like just incredibly bizarre. Like, I've seen some so bad that I've wanted to screenshot them on Twitter, but like I've resisted, because I'm like, this is too, like, you know, like, it's too much of a dunk, you know, like this is too embarrassing.
It's easy. It's low hanging fruit.
Yeah. Still, one of the weirdest accounts I've ever found on Twitter was someone that was like, they were like a Marxist. They referred to themselves as like a, you know, like a Marxist proletarian feminist, but their vibe was they were like an Elon Musk fan, and all of their stuff was talking about how Elon Musk was cracking down on the child sex trafficking trade. And, you know, that he was the only person that was taking this on. And I was like, what? This is like an ultimate, like, found a guy, you know, like, I just found a guy or whatever. But I was like reading through it, and I'm like, I'm not sure if this person, like, I don't think this person is in a good headspace. I think maybe this is like someone, you know, something weird going on. But it was deranged, and they were like tweeting at people saying that, you know, like, because, and it was all based on the fact that he called that guy in Thailand like a pedo or whatever like that.
That's right.
Like, this is him standing up. He's taking them down, and I was
okay.
Like,
yeah,
oh
I'll tell you what the truth is about that person, Tim. They're 12 years old. Yeah. That's the truth.
Oh no, they weren't. Like, they weren't. They were an account. We had mutuals. They were a fully grown adult person. Posted pictures, links to all this kind of stuff, and it was just like, okay, I'm swear, like, maybe this person is like in the middle of an episode or something like that. Like, and I can't in good faith like dunk on this person.
No,
but it was
I think you're absolutely right there.
Yeah. But it was like
choice.
You know, like really weird kind of like Musk like cult thing. But anyway,
it's so sad that like child trafficking has become this kind of almost immediate red flag for this person is not all there. Like in terms of, I mean, I don't mean that in like an ableist kind of way. I mean like I'm just talking about
they're just not connected to the.
And it sucks because child trafficking is a thing and it's a problem. And like it matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like when I hear child trafficking, I think somebody is reaching at the most inflammatory thing they can think of, which is sex trafficking of children or something. And then that's is the thing that you are supporting if you don't support the things that this person supports. Like if you don't like Elon Musk, you are pro-child sex trafficking. I can't believe that.
Yeah. And that's like a QAnon thing as well, right? And we had that down here at the convoy down at Parliament and stuff like that. Like people, you know, claiming that they were, you know, like doing the work against child sex trafficking, and that, you know, kind of protest thing was all about that, where it's like, no, like, you're not doing the work, you're just in Facebook comments, just, you know, like, there are people out there that are doing the work, but what you're doing right now is not it, you know? And it's like, as soon as you kind of criticize them or whatever, they're like, oh, look, this person is part of the, you know, the pedo elite or something like that. It's like, and then, like, you know, you peel off a couple layers and they get everything from, like, you know, some... You know, like the guy who ran 8chan, and he actually was like, you know, part of, you know, like doing the bad stuff.
Wasn't he like supposedly Q, like the Q guy?
Yeah.
Oh, really? The guy?
But we think he's probably the guy, the Q guy.
So not the original Q, but the guy that took over. And you know, But and there's like heaps of stuff like that, you know, or like how, you know, like all the Trump being implicated and all the Epstein stuff and all that. You know, it's just like, holy shit, like this.
Yeah, you got this so wrong, my friend. Literally, like, what are you talking
about? This is like a huge tangent. We go from Elon Musk to like QAnon, pedo, whatever.
It's related.
It is. I mean, like, you know, like when if we start talking about the Epstein stuff, hey. Anyway. What else have we got in the news? I'm sure there was something else.
This is the guy, by the way.
One
this is the supposed actual
guy
behind
Q.
Yeah. Wait. What? Hold up! I can't see the stream. What's going on?
This guy.
Yeah.
This guy right here. Supposedly, the guy. This is supposedly Q.
This is the guy that, you know, like all the stuff, like all the Pizzagate stuff, all that kind of shit, all comes back from this guy. And
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's Jim Watkins and Ron Watkins together, and if you look them up, like, they're both horrific people. They've basically done everything that Q has accused other people of doing. It's like,
of course they have.
It's wild.
Just like seriously, just like imagine that guy on the internet posting, laughing maniacally, like posting, like that guy was probably doing like Pepe when it was like super a right wing. Like dog whistle, well, you know, it still is used as a right-wing dog whistle by some people, but like, you know, when it was like the most popular with, you know, just really embarrassing, like so embarrassing. Anyway,
so before we got another like 10 minutes or so before we bring Lina in.
Through the tube strike.
Oh yeah. Cool. So this is it's really hard to find out info about this. So maybe if someone in the chat is in London, they might know, because so the RMT Union website is the only site that I could find that didn't talk about it as like in super negative kind of like, you know, like all the media stuff about it is like chaos in London, you know, like as tube workers walk out and all this kind of shit, and it's hard to find out what the situation is, but it seems like it wasn't like an indefinite strike, but they're planning strike days, and I think they did the 1st and the 3rd where the workers just walked off and shut down the tube, which is cool because, you know, usually like that's what the Pallet workers that we were looking at earlier did, where they started by just doing a day here and there and being like, okay, we're just not going to work on this day, and then, you know, kind of just like as a little thing to be like, this is what happens when we're not at work, and if you don't listen to us, these periods are going to become prolonged. So I think that's the situation what's been going on, but like I said, it's been really hard to find out.
Rob Rousseau in the chat points out that yes, the British media is going absolutely mental, saying that Putin and Russia are behind the Union action in the tube strikes because obviously Russia is communist and unions are communist.
But like this is like what I said, like everything else about it, aside from this RMT union, RMT are the union that, you know, responsible for this strike. Everything else about it is like just deranged, like, oh, you know, it's just chaos, it's madness, like how could they do this to the people of London and stuff, and it's like it's wild. And so they've been actually kind of, you know, there's been like a bit of back and forth with the mayor Sadiq Khan of you know, like, and this has been back and forth for a little while now, where he says like, don't strike, I'm trying to sort out like a long-term plan, you know, that'll be better for you guys or whatever, and they're saying like, no, you're just like you're just, you know, you're talking crap or whatever like that. This isn't like, we know what we want and this is what we're gonna do or whatever. And yeah, but it's like kind of, yeah, it seems like it's all posturing from Khan. So yeah, I don't know. So interesting. We'll see how it develops. But yeah, I mean, basically what they've been told is that there was going to be massive layoffs and pay cuts. I think they were either going to lose all or a lot of their pension, just stuff like that, you know. And these are people that have been keeping the public transport in London running through, you know, the pandemic, through all this kind of stuff that's been going on. Like, they should be getting paid more, but instead they're like, yeah, okay, so down the bottom here it says at least 600 job cuts, a raid on their pensions, and yeah, so look, if it's tube workers being told to take the hit for the political failures of City Hall and the DFT, which is the issue at the heart of the dispute. So yeah,
it's not exactly related. I think this did happen in London though. So people in the chat might have heard of Belly Mujinga. Belly Mujinga was a ticket officer in London, and she was spat at by someone. Now, Belly Mujinga was a woman of color, and you know, famously, you know, get fucking absolutely shat on in places of work, especially places where there's like a lot of footfall and stuff like that. And Belly Mujinga literally got spat at and died of coronavirus.
Wow.
Yeah. During the pandemic, and you know, and people are still asking for justice for Belly Mujinga because this was clearly like someone has spat on it. Like, if you're gonna spit on someone during a pandemic, you know what you're doing in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody's being told like, wear a mask, don't lick door handles, don't kiss anyone, our government was telling us not to fuck anybody. Do you know what I mean? So like, you know, it's so obviously like a racist incident, and yeah, like I said, not exactly a tube worker, but absolutely associated with you know, the UK rail work, UK transport and stuff like that. It's absolutely. And I assume most tube workers have you know, experienced similar abuses and stuff like that. So
it's just like, it's wild, like during a pandemic, like places like, you know, not just like, you know, like train stations and stuff, but the actual, you know, on the subway, on the trains themselves. That's just like the last place you want to be during a pandemic, you know? And it's like these people being there the whole time, making sure everything fucking still works, you know? It's wild.
So I want to briefly, before we invite our guest on to talk, I want to briefly touch on the trans situation, the trans situation in Texas, and to remind people that Texas is currently genociding trans kids, but more largely just say trans people, because I don't think that the direct attack of trans kids and all of anyone associated with them, anyone associating and allowing trans kids to exist, attacking all those people, I don't think is just strictly going to affect just the trans kids, as you can imagine. And so if you're not familiar, chat, very briefly, Governor Abbott of Texas has announced that puberty blockers are a form of puberty blockers is administered to children, trans kids, is a form of I'm not saying this, he's saying this, that it's a form of child abuse. And so that he said that the parents of those children need to be investigated as if they are child abusers. Any sort of licensed professional working with those kids, such as doctors, teachers, nurses, all those people are also arguably child abusers if they work with these kids and don't report those kids. And then anyone in the general population would also be liable and to be reprimanded for having contact with these kids and not reporting them. The liability would be something like a fine or even as much as criminal charges. So it's really, really, really disgusting what Governor Abbott is doing, and anyone who agrees with him, even like anyone who has a hand in it. And it's actually led to, ironically enough, one of the workers of the family, what is it called? Family, whatever, Child Protective Services in Texas, whatever acronym they use. One of the workers of the Child Protective Services is now being investigated by other workers of Child Protective Services because they're investigating that worker for child abuse because they have a trans daughter. I think it's a daughter, a trans child. And what's extremely predictable, and I think that a lot of you pretty much saw this one coming, is this has nothing to do with puberty blockers. Not in the rule in the investigation, not a single line, and the ACLU has covered it. Nothing has been mentioned of puberty blockers. It's merely this person has a trans child. Now we're investigating. And that's, of course, what it's about. It's about trying to extinguish transness. No matter what excuse you provide, oh, puberty blockers, oh, bathrooms, oh, whatever excuse you give, it's just about transphobia. It's just about genociding trans people away. So it's a pretty dire situation, Texas. I know that a judge stopped one of those investigations from occurring, which is great, but didn't stop any of the other ones, which sucks. So it's still happening and it's very real. And so I just wanted to announce that's so far what's happening. If anyone has any news, I've been trying to keep up with it, but it's kind of, I'm not the best at keeping up with unfolding events. I usually rely on people in my community to help me out with that. So if any of you have any updates, feel free to let me know right now, or maybe even like on stream tomorrow or whatever. Because I think we all need to have our fingers on the pulse of this. And not to mention, I would like to shout out and congratulate Keffels, who is a Twitch streamer on this platform, a trans streamer, and they raised over $50,000 in the past 24 hours for trans lives, which is really incredible.
Please go and show some love. Please go and show some love to Keffels. Absolutely phenomenal streamer.
I'm just very, 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 very proud of them.
Sophie is thinking as well about doing a fundraiser as well.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I've
it's
been talking about it for a while.
confirmed.
I never knew exactly which organization to use, so I might just copy what Keffels did and do the same thing. That's always the decision you have to make. It's like, okay, how are we going to get this done? How are we going to do it? And also might I mention that like a lot of the funds being raised, I don't know about that specific organization that Keffels used, but other organizations I've seen, and I've actually been involved in the past, because guess what, chat? Texas didn't just start being transphobic. The South didn't just start being transphobic, nor is the South exclusively transphobic, to be fair. I don't want it to be like South bad. But lots of GoFundMes, more formal and more casual, like as an individual, people sometimes run them, are often done for trans people to get out of this part of America, because it is just so horrible. And so that's something that has always been going on, and especially now it seems like there's a lot of people that are now actively trying to relocate, like parents trying to actively move because they're like, I love my kid, and now we're not allowed to exist in this state unless unless my kid stops being trans, or I start trying to oppress my kid. And so it's very, very horrible. Trevor Project. Oh, thanks. Hey, Mel. Hi, Mel. Trevor Project.
Mel.
Thank you, Mel.
Yeah.
Mel in the chat saying Trevor Project, and also Keffels was raising money for, what was it, Equality Texas? Yeah, Equality Texas Foundation. And I think someone else dropped this in the chat earlier, the Trans Family Network. I think you can donate to these. They are a volunteer-run non-profit dedicated to connecting volunteers across the country with members of the trans community in need. So you can check them out at transfam.net as well. And there's lots of people who are doing fundraisers. Keep an eye out on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter if you're not already. We're going to retweet stuff like that if we see it. So yeah. There's lots of ways that you can help, and it's incredibly important to be very, very aware of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
mean, not cool, but like, sweet. Good. We got
not cool at all. No.
Okay, yeah, cool. Those are the things that we wanted to talk about. Right. Well, I'll do my intro. This is the first intro I've ever written. So, you know, I need everybody to clap for me because I'm very good, obviously. Right. So, with all the recent attention in the media the war in Ukraine is getting, now is a better time than ever to learn about the threat of imperialism and what it does to countries on what is known as the imperial periphery. Our guest today, Lina, will be joining us to talk about how we could do more to be aware of how the countries we live in the imperial core strangle the growth and freedom of those not inside it. Gang, what do we know about the phrases imperial core and imperial periphery? We talk about it a lot already. You already know. Both of you.
I mean, you're asking me to talk about it?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure if this was part of your intro.
Are you talking to chat or what's going on right now?
No, I'm talking. No, when I say, well, I did say gang. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was stupid.
I didn't know if it was like, you know, like just a rhetorical question.
We're in a gang.
Yeah.
What do you know about the imperial core, the imperial periphery?
Yeah, well, I think it's I've only really kind of been introduced to the concept recently, and I think it's good because you know, like a lot of people use terms like the global south or like even like, you know, like third world countries and stuff like that. But when you actually look into the history of a lot of those terms, they're kind of bullshit, and they, you know, like they also kind of I don't think they are as black and white as, you know, like as it seems like. Yeah, it's really they're probably just like messy terms that don't really kind of like give us a really good idea. Whereas the imperial core is kind of more like, I think it refers better to, you know, like countries in the imperial core are like America, England, and even like Australia and New Zealand and stuff are definitely imperial core. Whereas the periphery are those countries outside of the core, usually you know, like countries that are kind of I would say that there is like some level of like the core is generally pushing out on the periphery in some way, whether it's like for you know, like taking in like resources, or, you know, like kind of expanding the influence of capital and capitalism and things like that. Yeah, there's probably a much more concise way of saying it though. But I would say think of the imperial core as well, for me, how I think of it is the network of states that kind of make up, that I guess set the hegemony of capitalism.
Yeah. I think that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, she would have a really more concise, way more better and concise way of
saying
it.
You're pretty spot on.
No, BS.
No, you're pretty spot on. Like I would say, yeah, like what you were saying about the global south is a very poor term to use because, you know, at the end of the day, like Australia and New Zealand, like you say, they're part of the imperial core and they are technically in the global south. So it doesn't actually include, it does actually include, you know, those countries, and as well, you know, calling countries third world countries is incredibly problematic for like several reasons. You know, at what point, like, why is there a ranking? And generally speaking, it's because of the fact that the countries that are in the imperial core are white majority and they are oppressing those countries. And so like the ranking is white supremacist in nature. And, you know, the white supremacy upholds that imperialism as well.
Well,
but yeah, should we bring
before we get too deep into it, and I want to bring our guest on, but I also have a note from Sophie, so maybe we'll bring our guest on and I can read that with our guest.
Yeah. Well, I think Sophie, does she want to? I think she might have wanted you to show the map first, just before we bring Lina in, because like there's a map to bring in and stuff. I don't know. Actually, yeah, I think maybe we could do that.
Okay, let's bring Lina in then. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that.
I'll
do it.
All right. So dragging Lina in right now.
Hey Lina, what's going on?
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. I'm Lina. Hi.
Hi.
Hey,
welcome to the
Lina.
show. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So imperialism. Let's get into it. I think that it's been a thing that a lot of people have been talking about, especially with regards to Ukraine lately and Ukraine and Russia. But it seems, at least the conversations that I've had on my stream have been like pretty revealing for, you know, how much so many people don't know about these topics, yet we do talk about them quite a bit. But before we jump too hard into the deep end on this, did you want to quickly introduce yourself to the community so we all get to know you a little better?
Hi, I'm Lina. I'm just sort of a Twitter person. I grew up in Palestine, and most of what I do, I'm an IRL activist for the most part, and most of what I do is related to that, but that also brings in like a quite detailed understanding of imperialism and sort of how those dynamics play out.
That's dope. That's very dope. Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you obviously have a wealth of knowledge and experience that you're drawing from. I'm just a white girl in America who grew up in the Midwest. So that's my extent. That's how much experience I've had with imperialism, and that I am, you know, in the imperialism. I'm more of the imperialist, I guess, if you could think of it, which does lend me a certain perspective, but it's not all that educated. So I'm very glad that you were able to join us and talk to us about this. Yeah, so we have a note from Sophie that I don't know if we should read now, but I also, where do you think we should start with this conversation? To piece through this. A little,
what have you guys gone over so far?
Nothing really. So like we just started talking about imperialism, and I was thinking about reading, because in the notes Sophie wrote this long paragraph, or this long like little kind of an essay, which I think is really great to like set the groundwork. So maybe we should read through that. But I think what a great place to start is to discuss you know, kind of like what imperialism is. And I know it sounds like a very silly question, but I don't think it's all that silly of a question, especially since it seems like people that even might have a decent grasp on imperialism, when it comes down to it, there are certain situations that are tricky for them because it kind of tests their understanding of it. Like, I think that a lot of us can understand very imperialist things. We can see that, okay, that's imperialism. But I think, especially with the Russia-Ukraine situation right now, it seems like a lot of people are trying to apply these what they felt like was imperialism to this, and they're like, no, it's not imperialism if America shows up and tries to defend Ukraine against Russia. That's
R2P.
Maybe we should talk about that in a second, but I think maybe is it cool if we start with the note from Sophie to kind of go over everything?
I'll read that then.
Because I think that's like a kind of like
idea.
It's like it seems like it's like a little kind of like brief overview, and then we can go back and we can kind of like talk about everything through there. And there's like a little map in there that I think will be really good. Bring up. But yeah, also while we do that, I'm just gonna duck out and check on my cat real quick.
Little kitten. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read this because Sophie couldn't be here with us today, chat, because Sophie's sick with the Rona, unfortunately. So I'm gonna read this ahead for everyone. Hey everyone, really sad I couldn't be around for this one, but I have COVID. I have a lot to say about imperialism, but just to add my bit here, it's important to remember imperialism isn't just boots on the ground, but media, border control, policy, and economics. America floods markets around the world with cotton and wheat that they don't need, completely crashing their domestic markets and forcing them to be dependent on this American foreign aid. Right now, obviously sanctions are on everyone's minds, but it's important to remember that America nominally helping by giving countries stuff can be just as much of a tool of control as taking things away. The freedom in the free market is the freedom afforded to the most important party, the winner in every deal, and that winner is America and its allies, which is why America is so determined to force the free market on every country in the world, because joining the free market means American domination. All right, I think I just want to take a moment to let that sink in for everyone before I move on to the next part. Because I think, the discussions we've been having, at least on my stream, about like, you know, is it is it imperialism if America is defending a helpless country against an evil invader? Which is like the way that people are thinking of it. I think that this hopefully addresses those concerns. That I honestly, as long as America is what it is, America, that it's swooping in to try to maintain, how do I put it?
Hegemony.
Yeah, it's hegemony, right? It's this benevolence, this so-called benevolence that is actually not truly benevolence, because if it was truly benevolence, we would see America being extremely different than it is, and also we would see other countries, not just this particular country, being assisted, you know. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the Ukraine-Russia stuff because I kind of want to, maybe if we have time we can do that, but it's just one of those examples of I think a confusion that I've been noticing a lot of people have, but I really appreciate this paragraph because I think hopefully it clears it up for a lot of people.
People confused about the Ukraine-Russia conflict? Never. I've not seen any of that.
People, the way a lot of people imagine imperialism is as always this sort of boots on the ground direct thing, and it's really not imperial. And I'll get more into this later, but imperialism's primarily an economic relation.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it's mostly about, at least in the modern day especially, it's about the relationship between the core and the periphery and how capital flows between them.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. Okay, let's get to the next part. Countries in the imperial core benefited from their natural resources, but countries in the periphery have their natural resources extracted and plundered by imperialist corporations. Countries in the imperial core grew richer through the growth of the manufacturing sector, industrialization, but manufacturing in the imperial periphery only continues to benefit the imperial core. The reason that everything we use is made by imperial periphery countries today is that our manufacturing boom led to our overcapacity in the global market, which made manufacturing products dirt cheap, which forced other countries to offer competitively low prices for the same goods. And now we've transitioned to a service sector economy and we use goods made by people in the imperial periphery. This is a lot to imagine. Chat, are we hanging on so far? I want to check in with chat real quick.
I do want to note one thing. The export of capital from the core to the periphery is also to allow the periphery to transition away from the feudal mode of production. Like, that's part of it.
Transition away from the feudal mode of production to a capitalist one?
Yes.
This is has been a huge thing in a lot of the kind of imperialism, Pacific imperialism from New Zealand and Australia out to all the islands and stuff. Basically expanding capitalism in the Pacific has meant moving from traditional island ways of life to basically introducing capitalism sort of thing. So they will go over there and they will set up things like bring in new like technology, resources, and all this kind of stuff. But it's for it's like one island, Banaba, off the coast of like Kiribati, that they basically they brought over all these cool things. Like they set up all these businesses there, all focused on extraction of like phosphate and things like that. And everyone was really excited. They're like, yeah, all these like, big machines, and like our island is finally doing something. And then they just totally like stripped all the phosphate out of the island and like basically destroyed the island, like just total like just turn the island into an extraction project. And it's this thing where it's like, the island was developed, in one way, but at what cost, There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, super in the chat says it's never to enable self-sufficiency, but to develop dependency.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So destroying other smaller, there's a lot of stuff in the islands where it'll be like, like they'll change the agricultural focus from creating food and things that sustain the island over to things that can be exported. So then also the island has to depend on, you know, like trade from other areas to cover their basic needs and things like that. Like, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you, Lina. That was a good note. Okay, so the Imperial Core today, we'll move on, chat. The Imperial Core today is a product of hundreds of years of colonialism, followed by the enforcement of free market capitalism, which let the richest countries, rich by stealing everyone else's wealth, get even richer. And we can see where the Imperial Core is very clearly if we look at all the harshest borders in the world. Inside the Imperial Core is 14% of the population, but 73% of the world's income. Here's a neat map. So this map is something that we've looked at before on this stream. And I think it's really helpful for giving a visual to something that sometimes it can feel like we're being super abstract, like Imperial Core, Imperial Periphery. It's like, what does that even mean? This is what it looks like. I like, and yeah, so you can see that there's little bits of, it's not, you can't avoid entire continents. There are still like pieces of, this is why we can't, when people say global north, global south, I don't think that really, for a lot of people, I think north and south, and like sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. And so, yeah, this is what the Imperial Core looks like. And this is why I think that's probably the best way to describe it, because we're just cutting to the chase. Like, who are the imperialists and who are the victims of imperialism? Really?
Yeah. And I think it's really good that they have the specified sort of like aggressive fronts. So you have like the red in between the USA and Mexico.
This is an aggressive border.
Have the, that's right,
the Imperial Core from the Imperial Periphery, and then so is here. That's interesting.
They've got all that lettered, so yeah, you could kind of see like where all the hard borders are and stuff. And like that first one that they talk about is the demilitarized zone in Korea. Yeah, very, very important.
Yeah,
I'd also like to note
to this
that
go on.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to note that with regard to this map, especially I'm going to talk about the EU, a lot of nations that are in the EU aren't even really part of the core. The EU is a financial instrument that exists to guarantee expanded markets for German and French products, for the most part. Especially like Greece. Look at what happened to Greece after the Greek financial crisis. Forced to accept austerity and a lot of IMF loans, which are an instrument of financial capital used to exert control over the Greek economy. This is the case for a lot of Eastern Europe. Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia. A lot of these countries are also cheap labor sources.
So what would you call a place like Greece then? Would that
either periphery or semi-periphery, which is another distinction. Probably not semi-periphery, actually. It would be a periphery country.
This is why it was such an interesting thing in the UK when Brexit came around, and why no one fucking knew what the fuck they were voting for, because obviously that kind of information isn't going to be available to the electorate, because as far as they're concerned, the EU is just people that make their bananas bendy or some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like they get different types of bananas and stuff.
What? They're bananas?
Yeah. It was some absurd shit, and like they were, and a lot of people just thought, because like Jeremy Corbyn was is quite known for being pro-Brexit. He's actually pro-Brexit, and of course Brexit under a Corbyn-led government would have been fine, but of course Brexit under Tory rule is not going so well. So yeah, just a little side note there. My apologies, please continue.
All right, so that was a really interesting note. Thank you, Lina. I had no idea. So there's these, because I guess that does make sense, because sometimes the relationship, like you'll see that although we do talk about these divisions, we do live in like the real world where there sometimes aren't such clear-cut divisions, and that's like a really interesting point. That's if I can try to relay it to make sure I get it right. You're saying that some countries have some function as imperial core in that they still receive the somewhat of a protective status, because they are so coveted by other imperial core countries as markets, but in actuality they are also thoroughly exploited and absolutely dependent upon imperial core countries.
Yes, we would refer to these as the semi-periphery.
Okay.
Sometimes. It depends.
Got it.
Semi-periphery nations are ones that are like developing as opposed to undeveloped.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a lot of focus and attention for very good reason. These would include like Russia, China, India, not South Korea much anymore, Iran, Greece, much of Eastern Europe, Brazil, South Africa, Argentina, Mexico, those kinds of nations.
Yeah.
That exert a bit more power. They aren't just necessarily pushed around, but they're also like forced into these arrangements, either with or against the periphery for some particular reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The IMF is a major arm of imperialism. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting. Because, like some people will say that, like the IMF is imperialism, but then they will say that, like the Belt and Road Initiative is also imperialism. Whereas I think that there's like, like, I don't think if you really look at them side by side, I don't think it's the same kind of thing when you consider like the IMF, like a lot of the power of that, a lot of the imperialism isn't from the loans. Well, it isn't from the like the money that they're giving them or whatever like that. It's the debt afterwards, and it's the kind of like the leaning on repayments of that debt. Whereas the Belt and Road Initiative is a lot more. I think it's the like I don't like the actual like arrangement, the loan arrangement and stuff like that is a lot less aggressive and things. So I would like I mean. I think there's probably someone out there that is a lot more like kind of equipped to talk about the ins and outs of that. But from my understanding, the Belt and Road Initiative seems like far, far preferable to the IMF. And like, I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, Lina, do you know any more about that?
Any more about, sorry.
Belt and Road. I don't know anything about this topic for the record.
BRI is mostly a way to guarantee overland and sea routes for to transport Chinese goods between China and Western Europe, mostly.
Yeah. So they're like building infrastructure along the way, sort of thing like that. Whereas like so, a lot of these like like places are like, hey, like this is a mutually beneficial arrangement or whatever like that. So it's like they're kind of not really like whereas like the IMF is like, we'll help you build infrastructure. But, we'll give you the money to build infrastructure and that, but you kind of owe us for, like, whatever. Mm-hmm. Whereas, my understanding is, like, a lot of these nations are, like, instead going towards China and being like, actually, like, this will benefit us both if we build infrastructure together without, like, these, like, aggressive loans and stuff. But,
China is also in the semi-periphery. It's moving. China's a state in transition, very much so.
All right. I'm gonna read the last part.
Unelectable airwaves is brought up a little point. IMF loans dictate the pace of privatization. Don't think BRI does the same.
Belt and Road
I think.
No.
Right.
BRI is mostly to build infrastructure. For movement of goods.
Yeah, but it seemed like a lot of people, I think Twitter people be like, like, you think the IMF is, is imperialism? What about China and the Belt and Road Initiative? Is like,
it's a lot of, we live in the American propaganda sphere. We're going to hear so much more about more minor stuff that our imperial enemies do.
Especially like all the BRI stuff throughout Africa and stuff, like there's like a lot of these people being like, oh, China are trying to take over Africa, and the BRI thing is like their backdoor, and it's like, no, they're just like, I don't think that's it at all. Like, anyway, I mean, like if we spend too much time talking about all the wild things we hear in Western media, we'll probably be here all day. So should we move along?
Let me read this last paragraph. Discussion of from Sophie. In discussion of Ukraine, it's worth acknowledging that EU membership and other factors is something that can allow countries to move from the periphery to the core, and shows how it is still a messy distinction, but for the most part, this map shows us where the lines are drawn. No more imperialist wars, no more of a class war. Okay, I'm going back to lie down. So that's the end.
Thank you.
And this
Sophie.
is kind of
So that was a
what
note from Sophie.
Lina, what you were discussing, I think Sophie kind of touches on it. This like EU membership allowing countries to be on that like transition between periphery and core, or at least Sophie's kind of alluding to a messiness of the distinctions, and like you were saying, which I found very interesting.
I'd actually like to counter this. I can't think of a country that has been moved from the periphery to the core after joining the EU. I think the purpose of trying to get Ukraine into the European Union is to treat it much like Poland and Bulgaria are already treated, as a source of cheap labor and markets for German and French goods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like maybe like I can see like the idea of moving from the periphery to the core being a promise made by the EU? Like I think that is you know, like when we're looking at the, you know, what is sold to people as the benefits of joining the EU, I can definitely see that as a thing. But that's interesting that nobody has shifted, you know, because it's kind of like that's one of the you know, like the whole thing is like, you know, come join the EU, come sit at our table, you know, reap the benefits. But yeah, interesting that that you said that no one has actually shifted that position.
Well, it's interesting if you think of like descriptions of imperialism as the exportation of capitalism, because considering that definition, it is very akin to like saying, hey, if you simply toe the line and like hang out with us and agree with us, then you're going to become a Jeff Bezos one day or something. This type of pipe dream that's given to workers to keep them on the hook and to sell them this illusion of becoming one of the big dogs. I don't know. I can see parallels between that type of like that type of culture created out of capitalism being transformed into this one where you're selling countries on a dream of becoming one of the big bad bullies, you know?
Pretty much, yeah. This is what happened to Japan and Korea after the Second World War. Economic, actually, no, I don't think that term applies, but a lot of them, like Japan's basically a one-party state, right? Like there is one party that controls most of the parliament, and that party has been in power for decades, and it is the only political force. And it enforces this mode of capitalism that was imported from the US. South Korea, even more so. The South Korean government makes it illegal to support a lot of left-wing causes, and it's mainly used as a US military base, even though it's like on paper economically prosperous.
Yeah, I've actually heard that from a few Korean people I've seen on Twitter about how like they're absolutely sort of sick to death of the attempted westernization of loads of shit in Korea and stuff, and it's like there's a whole like culture erasure that happened because of the war and stuff. And they just like you say, just like literally like use it as a front for North Korea, you know, to sort of like.
What do you think would happen to South Korea and Japan today if they said, okay, we want your US military bases out? Would they be the economically prosperous powers they are today? Would they continue to hold that position?
Yeah.
It's like,
that's it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got Mel saying, Korea is an occupied state by the US. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I feel like there's a lot of, I mean, it's not even like miseducation, it's just like a total lack of education about in general, just, you know, the Korean Peninsula and its history and politics and stuff and all, you know, like just like nobody in the West knows what the fuck they're talking about in regards to that, you know. It's just like it's like good Korea and bad Korea, you know. It's like and I mean it's like when you look at the media, you look at all the movies and all the kind of gags and stuff like that, it's like, you know, like people have no idea. They don't know what America did to Korea. It's completely fucked.
And this is why I always feel
so
like
fucked.
This is why I'm always very like insecure to like discuss any of this stuff, and I always try to like keep my mouth shut, because as much as I feel like sometimes I have these ideas about how the rest of the world works, I have to remember like from this conversation alone, I'm already getting blown away with so much of the knowledge that y'all are talking about, that Lina's bringing to the table, and it just reminds me of how little I do know about this stuff. and also how much confidence I as an American have in the knowledge that I think I have. Like, American propaganda has lended Americans this idea that we understand what the fuck is going on in the rest of the world, and if it's whatever our American propaganda has told us, and it's very much not accurate, but it does lend that sense of false security. So, you know, be okay saying be okay admitting to yourself, chat, that you don't know a lot of things. So those of you who know more, that's great. That's awesome. You're wonderful. Keep it up. But I know a lot of my viewers are probably very similar to me in that we're still learning, and so I hope that this is so far it is an informative episode for you, and will continue to be so. So yeah, imagine knowing things. Yes. Cringe. It's very cringe.
Don't be. That's it. Don't be afraid of being cringe. You know, you might think it's cringe to like not know everything on a subject and stuff, but that level of cringe is fine. Do you know what I mean? There's like an acceptable level of cringe.
But you're cringe.
You need to not be afraid of that. Exactly.
It's not even limited to like U.S. like Asian satellite states or like POC states. The Australian government experienced a coup in 1975 because they were sort of moving away from U.S. hegemony. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people would find that ridiculous, but it's part and parcel of American foreign policy.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like, it's so like all over the world. It's just like anyone takes a step away from America, and it's like, oh, there's a coup. Like, that's so weird.
Well, that's kind of like what happened. That's kind of what happened with. We touched on this earlier. In the UK, we were sort of like very, very, union focused and stuff. Wait, I'm not sure if we did talk about this. I think I might be remembering a Sean video that I watched earlier today. But yeah, so the UK used to be very sort of like labor focused and union focused and shit like that back in the 70s after the war and stuff. And then, Margaret Thatcher came in and just fucking battered the unions, just absolutely trashed them and stuff. And it's like, this stuff happens all the time. Like, it wasn't necessarily like a coup in the UK, but it was certainly like an arm of the neoliberal agenda to like destroy the unions and stuff in the UK. So yeah, it happens very, very regularly, actually, even within countries now known to be in the imperial core.
Yeah, I mean, look at
even
I'm not saying this is a coup, but sometimes I'll describe it as a coup just because I'm feeling inflammatory. But the way that the America treated Bernie Sanders, specifically the Democratic Party, I don't think Bernie Sanders is an anti-imperialist. I don't think that even remotely. But I think he does represent the start of an awakening of the working class in building solidarity with each other instead of relying on an external source like the state to provide it for them. Even though he is an elected official and that's very much dependent upon the state. I'm very aware of this. But the fact that he was a grassroots run candidate who actually inspired people to he was radical in, if you agree to nothing else, he was radical in the manner in which he brought people together and got them thinking, hey, maybe if we just stuck to with each other, us workers, we could actually accomplish something, just the workers. And that alone, I think, the other things he proposed, but I think that was probably the biggest threat to the establishment. So it doesn't have to, that I would say America is absolutely part of the imperial core. So I think, like I said, I don't think he's an anti-imperialist, but you see similar shades of this, where anytime anyone's trying to step away from that narrative, the narrative of imperial core oppresses the imperial periphery, and America always has to approve of everything, everyone's business. And if they don't approve, then it's going to be a bad time for you. Like, if you start to veer away from that, it seems like, shit comes crashing down on you.
Yeah. Start getting all these like weird, like far right radicals start getting like mysterious donations in your country, and it's like
that's less so a product of like imperial control, and more that following the Second World War, a lot of Nazi sympathizers in Western Europe weren't prosecuted. They were placed in positions of government. A friend noted to me that one of the guys who was part of the Dutch Nazi Party was made chief of police in Amsterdam to hunt communists in the 1950s.
Yeah. That's fucking wild.
There's been a systemic and continuous dismantlement of the labor movement in the West since the 50s. But anyway, yeah.
Well, you wanted to start off with a few points, didn't you, Lina?
Yes, I did. Honestly, to fully understand the nature of imperial relations, you kind of have to start at the beginning. So you kind of have to start with the beginnings of colonial rule. And the two subjects are distinct, but they're sort of very interlinked. As in, imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. It originates when capitalist states need to export finance capital to the periphery. And so you can't get that without the net influx of resources that you get from colonial exploitation. So you have these 5 colonial powers: Portugal, Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands. And they sort of divide up much of the Americas and India between them. And through this, you get this evolution of Dutch and English capitalism. And from this begins the start of imperial relations. You get the mercantile system, which requires the import of bullion, raw goods, and the export of manufactured goods. This is sort of the low stage, and this results in this primitive accumulation of capital in the core. But once you get this industrialization, then suddenly you have specifically Britain, because for most of the 19th century, it was Britain. Britain was the dominant imperial power. You get the British sort of enforcing and forcibly opening markets to export manufactured goods in other countries. Specifically, I think the example that's most key is the Opium Wars. China was, and sort of is like naturally, one of the largest exporters of goods on the planet. But Britain had a net deficit of bullion export, had a net deficit in trade with them. So they ended up losing a lot of bullion out of their treasury in exchange for Chinese goods.
When you say bullion, is it like literally bullion?
Gold, literally gold and silver.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
And so you get this conflict, which results in what the Chinese called the Century of Humiliation, the forcible opening of what was at the time the last market in the world to British finance capital. You get Hong Kong being built in order to manage trade in this manner. Sorry, I'm just reading over my notes.
No, that's okay. Yeah. This is all really, really important shit, as you say. Like the history is absolutely key to it.
Speaking of notes, chat, I hope you're all taking copious notes, right? Chat, I hope, because there may or may not be a quiz at any point.
You never know.
You never know.
This is a form of violence. It's knowledge-based violence. The threat of the quiz makes you.
The threat of the quiz is authoritarian.
That's right. That's right. You have to adhere to the learning, otherwise.
Otherwise, it's a struggle session.
That's right.
British activity in India and China was the first kind of sort of economic infiltration and empire building of this kind. It was unprecedented in global history. Hold on. Yeah.
They did a whole bunch of horrific shit to the like the king of India, right? I heard that they like pretended to be friends with like the top general, like what a British general pretended to be like friends with one of the Indian top generals, and kept like just giving him little hints of like, hey, you ever think about being king and shit like that, and just being like, oh, it wouldn't be crazy if you just were king. Like, imagine, like, you got a load of guns as well, like you could just do it, you know. And then apparently, like, he did kill the king of India, and then he was like, yeah, you're gonna make me king now, and the British just murdered him. Like
for most of the period. For most of the period constituting industrialization, and for most of the period beforehand, most of the economic activity was focused on building up massive reserves of gold and silver.
Right.
This was the foundation of the Spanish Empire for a very long time, was taking resources from the earth. And even when it wasn't that, it was still the resource exploitation, just of a different sort. You see this also in the North American British colonies, where it's focused on the plentiful and fertile soil, which you can use to grow rice, indigo, that sort of thing. They didn't really care about the peoples of the area. They wanted, it wasn't even a labor relation. It was in order to simply take these raw resources. But as the resources got depleted, the assets left in those places was the labor of the people there.
Right. Okay.
So once the assets are depleted and you still have this like captive, exploited, dependent workforce, is that what we're saying? Then what happens after that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Then what, so what happens after that in the story?
So Lenin describes imperialism as sort of a merging of manufacturing and finance capital. Hold on. I have my notes here. Yeah.
Chat should be taking notes. So and if you need to take a pause, then chat can catch up because chat is taking notes.
That's right.
Chat.
And I'm also taking notes. Definitely was taking notes the whole time. Definitely didn't forget to take notes last time.
So in contrast to this previous sort of competitive capitalism between imperial states, you get this sort of monopoly capitalism. You get people moving from the core to the periphery, not out of any sort of basic human migration, but to establish enterprises there that can be used to exploit the labor of those places. That sort of economic relationship is flipped on its head.
Okay.
And this sort of began to take hold in the latter half of the 19th century. Okay. And you see this mainly in Britain first. We call this period the British century for a reason, Pax Britannica. And that was because Britain was basically essentially the sole dominant power. But a new power began to rise, starting around the 1870s, and that was the German Empire. And with the rise of the German Empire, the last major region on Earth that hadn't totally succumbed to imperial domination, which was the continent of Africa, got divided at the Congress of Berlin. And this was sort of the end of it. There was no more territory to conquer. There was nothing else. So now you have these two competing empires, Germany and Britain. And the British were really, really scared of increasing German influence. And so you get this sort of competition beginning in 1886 and continuing into the early 20th century. You have the Anglo-German naval arms race. You have the formation of great imperial power blocks in continental Europe. And sort of this is all coming to a head. There's so much writing at stake. And then the First World War breaks out, which is explicitly a war between imperial powers.
Yeah.
And this is where the relevance to today's conversation comes in, because this is when Lenin was sort of active in the socialist parties of Europe. And his position, along with Karl Liebknecht, was that socialists should strive to make their power stand down, to not involve themselves in this. And this is called revolutionary defeatism. Opposition to inter-imperialist war.
So this is like the no war but class war type perspective, where it's like any war between these powers is going to serve capitalism, or in this case, you could just straight up just say, I guess, in imperialism or the ruling class, and it will never serve the proletariat. Is that a fair, like, I don't know a lot about Lenin, but I'm trying to learn.
Inter-imperial war serves only to hurt the working class of the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some people just recently, trying to do dunks on, I think it was like the Communist Party of Britain, where they had put out a thing saying, our position is that, the UK shouldn't get involved in this or whatever. And people were using it as a shot to take dunks. I saw some person was like, oh yeah. And, back in the day, the British communists opposed getting involved in World War II as well. This was like their party line or whatever. And it's like, I feel like, people using it as but they didn't want to fight the Nazis. But I think it's like, no, it's like a pretty consistent position of, like a lot of communist parties around the world that working class people, they shouldn't send working class people to go die in inter-imperialist conflicts and things like that. I don't think this is a surprising take. And I think that anyone that looks at this and finds this surprising or shock, or whatever, is probably doesn't know about what, they don't know what communist parties are or what they're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing as well, isn't it? It's like everybody in Britain is always too quick to forget just how fascist we have been all over the world in our empires, So it's
Hey, we don't
it's
forget
absurd.
that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I bet you don't. Yeah.
So you get in 1902 this guy. His name is John A. Hobson, and he was sort of one of the first to write on this shift in how capitalism functions. There were anti-imperialists before him. There was the Anti-Imperialist Society in the United States, for example, that opposed U.S. War on Spain and the annexation of the Philippines. But Hobson was one of the first to write on this. And his whole thing was that imperialism was sort of this combination of nationalist and capitalist fervor that results in exploitation overseas for the benefit of business by governments. But he did not see this as inherent to capitalism. He saw it as something that could be fixed. Lenin breaks with him on this. Also, he was a massive anti-Semite, but regardless, Lenin breaks with him on both of those and sees this as not a side result of capitalism that could be avoided, but the highest stage in which nations need to open up foreign markets and need to export finance capital in order to maintain their own economies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like this, this mindset of constantly growing, forever growing and stuff. You're going to need to keep finding new places to extract resources from, and everything like that. It's easy to see it as a continuation of the same thing, or the logical conclusion.
Exactly. So Lenin's writing on this in 1916, and then you get the interwar period between the wars, and during this period in the Second World War, and immediately afterward, the British Empire is in decline. It's dying out. Territories of the British Empire are breaking away, and they are forming their own independent states, not under formal control by the British state. And this comes to its head during the Suez Crisis, in which both the Anglo and French empires are humiliated utterly and politically and just break apart. Most remaining territories leave, or there's revolutions like in Algeria. And public sentiment turns against open control of foreign territory. That was the first Suez Crisis. There is a second one, but it's not particularly relevant. So the role of global imperial hegemon gets handed off, essentially, from one side of the Anglosphere to the other. America is now the center of not only the Western bloc of military powers, but also the new imperial core. It is the United States which fuels a lot of this. And then you get the Cold War, in which there is competition between the socialist bloc of the Soviet Union and the Western imperialist and capitalist bloc of the US. But you can't just conquer a nation. You're not allowed to just annex foreign territory as a colony. Yeah. That's frowned upon. That's considered bad. So you get institutions, international institutions, after the founding of the United Nations, like the IMF and the World Bank.
Yeah.
And these institutions, now that you can't just directly control a country's politics, use loans in order to control internal financial and economic policy. I think the example I want to point you to the most is Argentina in the 70s. Argentina took out a lot of loans to build up infrastructure and to build wealth. Argentina in the early 20th century was one of the richest nations on earth, with a per capita income higher than that of the United States. But it had fallen behind, and it was trying to build back up. So it took out a lot of loans. And then, I'm checking my notes. It defaulted. It wasn't able to pay them back. At all. And I'm so sorry. I'm just
you're fine.
No, it's fine. Yeah, honestly, you're doing great, by the way. Yeah. Don't trip.
I'm just kind of astounded at how like young America's superpower status, like how young it is. Like it just, you always assume that America's kind of always just been like the top dog in a way, but like it really hasn't. And I think it's just, I think this flies in the face of American exceptionalism, obviously pretty hard, but it does. I don't think this is something that America likes to flex, or like at least likes to discuss, that like we just started being like historically, like we are not, it's been a second that we've been the superpower, had this hegemony, and it is pretty violent and pretty widespread, obviously, but like sometimes in it you think that it's been like this forever. Like it feels like capitalism has always been the system. America has always been number one or whatever, but no, it's definitely not the case.
There's that Le Guin quote about the divine right of kings, which is really good. What is it? It's we live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. It's that same thing, like we feel like, like Western hegemony, capitalism, like US kind of control has, it seems inescapable, but so did, everyone thought fucking the divine right of kings to be rulers. Like, that was just how it was always.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should carry on with.
So following this, a lot of the real wage in Argentina just sort of collapsed. A lot of the economy collapsed. People tried to implement austerity, but it just didn't work out. And even though and the country just didn't receive the foreign investment that it had come to depend on. So much turmoil occurred that the government faced a military coup in 1976 by the Argentine armed forces. Henry Kissinger, by the way, was the one who arranged this. What began was called the National Reorganization process, and Argentina fell under a right-wing dictatorship, which sought to rectify this problem. And
that's the case for a lot of Latin American countries.
And this is how it goes in South America and in Africa and in Asia and everywhere else. So much foreign investment, which is used to make these countries dependent on the imperial court, who are the ones who provide these loans and this investment.
And it's fucking wild when you look at like Henry Kissinger's personal involvement in so many of these things. It's like, like the man was like, has his fingers in every like evil little pie, like an absolute monster.
Easily one of the worst people. Absolutely.
Thomas Sankara took power in Burkina Faso at some point. I forget when he came to power.
It was the 70s.
Yeah, the 70s. He decided that he was going to be independent, that he was going to focus on producing and building infrastructure, and that he was going to be independent of the Imperial Core. And then he got...
I should bring up a photo of him, by the way, because I can't stand looking at this gremlin anymore.
Who are we bringing up a photo?
He wanted to make Burkina Faso independent by means of producing its own food, by means of producing its own infrastructure, by means of becoming an economic power in West Africa. And when he tried to abandon the West African franc, which is the sort of economic bloc controlled by France, he wanted to give it up. He was couped for that. And the government which came after him reintroduced dependence on Western power, on Western loans, and dismantled everything he did. And this is what happens.
Sankara was so based, in fact, that he actively made men in Africa do everything that women did 1 day a week, because he realized how fucked up patriarchy was. He was like, we're gonna have a week where men look after the children, they go do the shopping, they clean the houses. Yeah, literally, he was like, yeah, we're literally gonna do that. But he was based in so many ways, and it was such a shame. He literally got murdered by someone he thought was a really good friend and comrade. I think the guy's name was oh no, I can't remember his name, but it begins with a D, I think, or a G. And he basically he got murdered by him, even though a lot of his close-knit people were like, yo, this guy is going to shoot you, he's going to fucking kill you. And he was like, no, we gotta trust people, he's been a friend for years and stuff. And he just fucking murdered him. It's real sad.
Mel's pointing out in the chat how he got everyone completely vaccinated, which over at the time was completely not a thing happening. He and how he actually shifted the culture to become more progressive over time. He didn't just come in and he was like, all right, everyone, we're passing a law to respect women, he did it so well. Over time he gradually shifted the culture, and this is a guy that they were like, people are gonna kill you or whatever, and he would still walk down to the market by himself, and he wasn't sitting in some gated mansion.
He replaced all of the government vehicles with super cheap cars. He sold them off and stuff like that. Anyway, so in 1991, at the end of 1991, the USSR falls. It's over. The nation's dead. And suddenly, this Western bloc, which had for years been doing these things to oppose communist influence, suddenly had no more opponents. So they'd pull back, right? The world will remain as it is. Nope. IMF, the IMF gives out way more money in loans, way more foreign investment is conducted by the United States and Western Europe. The rates of foreign intervention increases. The Gulf War had only happened a year before. The West, now unopposed, grows even more bold in what it attempts to do. And in the heart of the former Soviet Union, it installs Yeltsin in order to deregulate the Russian economy and to sell off Russian assets. And what happens is that these state institutions get sold off for scrap to the lowest bidder, privatized completely.
Yeah, and that's why it's such a joke when, people nowadays are like, oh yeah, Russia, they're communists. You get these right-wingers in America who are like, oh yeah, we need to fight against Russia because it's communist, but then they also say, well, actually Russia's pretty based because they don't like gay people, and trans people and stuff. So it's just that bizarre double fucking take that they've got there. It completely just wrong on all counts. Obviously they're right about Russia not liking LGBTQIA plus folk, but definitely incorrect about communism. They gutted it. They gutted the entire thing, and there were so many people who were like, yeah, we remember it being shit under communism, but it's actually way worse now anyway. So it's kind of most people who were alive in Soviet Russia and are still alive now. You know, they're kind of just like, well, it seemed like it was a better thing. It's not everyone, obviously, because lots of people have you know, changed their ideas since living under capitalism and stuff. But it caused all sorts of bizarre things that like caused the rise of the Nazbol movement in Russia, which is like such a bizarre thing. That was happening around the time of the fall of the USSR, and it was such an odd mishmash of like Nazis and, you know, hardened communists and
I mean, I think there's always been like that kind of like like, you know, like the whole national Bolshevik thing or whatever, like there's always been like a kind of element there, but
100%.
It's wild how they like
the National Bolshevik Party in Russia was sort of an absurdist party by I believe his name is Andrei Limonov. It wasn't it was intended to be purposefully ridiculous, but sort of Limonov's thing was that like he thought that what Russia needed was an absolutely absurd party. To do whatever was popular, whatever conception
absolute
was popular.
Shit poster, right? Like, like that guy would absolutely be on Twitter these days.
Yeah. Limonov's a piece of shit, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, he was a disgusting piece of shit.
So we see this emboldening. And sorry this history section is dragging on so long. It's just important.
It's important.
I mean, history's long.
Yeah. So you see the first steps of this in Iraq. And Iraq had already gone through the Gulf War. It had been devastated already. And the US says, we're going to sanction you. And these sanctions are murderous, brutal, with no more bloc to oppose them. They have a universally applied sanctions regime. In Iraq. And this sanction regime kills 500,000 children.
Yeah.
And hundreds of thousands of adults. And after this devastation, 9/11 happens, and the US says, well, we're just going to invade.
Yeah.
And kills 1 million more. And this invasion, A, quieted an anti-US voice in the world, and B, opened up a foreign market. And not necessarily because the Iraqi people wanted iPhones and televisions and stuff, but sort of conflict takes on a new form at this point, which is bad if you're an Iraqi civilian or an American or anyone else, but it's really good if you're a Lockheed Martin or a Raytheon executive or a shareholder. You get these drawn-out occupations that take decades and waste so much money and resources. And but it's really, really good for driving up the profits of these defense companies, of this military-industrial complex. So they do it.
Yeah, like obviously, like that's the main fucking reason that they went in there and did that in it. And I feel like there's someone. It was Hillary Clinton recently, wasn't it? Talking about like fucking Afghanistan and Russia. Like she was like talking about how like, oh, you know, Russia tried to fucking invade Afghanistan and stuff, which is like also not entirely true. The Soviet Union went into Afghanistan to support a like communist socialist party that were basically democratically elected there. And the people who were fighting against them, the Mujahideen, were like funded by the US and the fucking and the UK,
yes.
Literally to destabilize it. And it was so absurd that she literally brought that up to sort of like, you know, compare what was happening in Ukraine. It's like, oh, Russia does this all the time and like goes in, and it's like, what are you talking about? It's two completely different scenarios that you're on about. It's so absurd. But yeah, sorry.
Not only that, but starting with the Gulf War, the U.S. implemented a no-fly zone over the nation of Iraq, and this no-fly zone would last until the beginning of the Iraq War. The reason why the Iraq War was over so quickly was because Iraq was literally not allowed to have an air force. The U.S. blew up every Iraqi fighter plane that took off. And, you know, think about how people are calling for a no-fly zone to be established over Ukraine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I think people don't understand what that means. I think they think that no-fly zone means like, oh, we're just gonna, make it so they can't fly planes in and out of the area or something. It's like, no, it means that they will shoot down anything they see.
Literally anything.
Literally, like that's
it means anything in the air over that area is shot down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
At the point at which that no-fly zone was issued, by the way, there were only 3 no-fly zones in the world. 1 over Bosnia, 1 over Libya, and 1 over Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Right, of course. And that's another like conflict area as well, like completely pertinent to what you were saying earlier about like the EU or like maybe countries being in Europe doesn't necessarily mean they're in the imperial core. Like Bosnia was somewhere that was like absolutely fucked over, and it's basically Europe, like the Balkans, you know.
Look at the state of Libya right now.
Right.
Do people really want that for Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is it.
Fucking slave markets. Fucking.
Yeah, legitimate. And like this is what happens, right? Like and it's wild. Like we've seen this happen. We've seen this play out so many times, And it's wild because like it seems like in a lot of media that I have been exposed to, there hasn't been too much. Like, and I mean, like, more mainstream media, there hasn't been too much kind of pushback against the kind of like, the US and the NATO kind of line of like, this is the, that we need to push back, we need to, do sanctions, we need to, like establish a no-fly zone or whatever like that. It seems like what I remember from growing up with, like Iraq and stuff like that, there was like always, there was like people speaking out. There was like musicians. It was like I remember like in the newspaper over here and stuff. There would be people talking about it, being like, "Hey, is this what we should be doing? Is it whatever?" But it's wild. I mean, maybe it just is like a kind of speaks to how I guess like the media's become more I'd say like more entrenched in or I guess like less there's like less I would say less alternative voices in media these days. Well, actually not even that. Like I would say like like there's a lot of like a lot of big publishing outfits did speak against the war back in the day or whatever like that, even in like kind of corny liberal ways or whatever like that. But it just seems like everyone is kind of a little bit more like under the thumb these days. I'm not sure what's up with that. But
if you want to hear about the one over Bosnia, I would suggest looking up Operation Deny Flight.
Oh yeah, Operation Deny Flight.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna write that down. Because that's the thing. Like a lot of people, they don't understand what it means to say like no fly zone. So I see like a lot of like the liberal kind of infographic types are saying like like why we should have a no fly zone. It's like you don't realize what you're talking about here. Like.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot.
Yeah, no.
People talk about no-fly zones, and it's especially being peddled by very not smart people on the internet. And like I keep seeing them come out in droves, like talking, flexing this so-called expertise on no-fly zones. And I'm like, what is a no-fly zone, and why is it only dumbasses talking about it right now? That's the only vibe. That's the only information I have on no-fly zones. I've talked about it. We never got into it really, but that's it.
It's the same with like sanctions and stuff as well. People saying like sanctions are a way towards peace. Like sanctions, like Putin doesn't give a fuck about sanctions.
No sanctions regime has ever worked.
Yeah.
I'll just say that right now. No sanctions regime has ever accomplished its stated goal. They have accomplished their goals, which is to immiserate the populace of whatever country they're targeting.
The working class population are the ones. Like you see, like already, like PayPal and all these other payment, like verification transaction services, whatever, have started rejecting, Russian transactions and things like that. So you get all these people like. Gig workers, artists, even like streamers, a lot of Twitch streamers in in Russia are now like completely out of work. You know, anyone that already had like a precarious income or whatever, like, you know, like now it's even more compromised or whatever. You know, like these people are saying like they're just completely fucked.
The stated goal is to like, you know, get ordinary Russians to rise up against the government. But like, I have a queer friend in Russia, and she's like, you know, like 19, and I send her money occasionally because she fucking needs it. And I sent her like $300 because I knew like Switch was going to be taken down, and now I can't send her shit. I can't help her. What's she gonna do against fucking the Russian government?
Well, here's the liberal solution.
Like these people, like they have no money or time to do that anymore. You know, like,
I had an absurd interaction on Twitter today with someone who was saying that like sanctions against Russian Twitch streamers was a good thing. Did you see that? Because they were saying like, oh Sophie every single Russian person's taxes goes towards their wars, and I was like, how do you feel about like the UK and US citizens whose taxes go towards their wars? And of course that fucking, you know, that idiot just didn't even respond to that, because they just you know, basically repeat what they fucking heard. They repeat what they've heard people in the ruling class say, which is like Russians need to be punished. Do you know what I mean? Because of course people in the ruling class don't give a fuck about people in Russia who would oppose you know, what's going on there and stuff. It's absurd.
I want to repeat something that Crowdbabe said, because I think it's really important. I know we're absolutely saying it, but I want to say it straight up, that there's no such thing as targeted sanctions that hurt only the leaders. Sanctions, because I've seen liberals, I even tweeted about this morning, I think. We were reading this article the other day on stream, and I had a tweet about it this morning because I couldn't stop thinking about it. This liberal who is like, he's like one of the main contributors to LGBTQ Nation. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but like he wrote this thing about how like we should be like issuing targeted sanctions at Putin and the Russian oligarchs. And like, you cannot do that. That's not how that works. What will happen
targeting
is
sanctions are not a thing, right?
It's an absurd, like literally, how does that even work? That would mean that... Yeah, go ahead.
We're gonna sanction the oligarchs. What, you're gonna sanction Lower Manhattan? Like...
yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Or like there's like all the, you know, like the like how they have all the mansions and like, you know, just outside of London and everything like that. It's like, you know, it's like shit, like how are you gonna sanction, you know, these people like with that live and operate within a completely different world to the working class of the people that are fucking, you know, of the country that is fucking, you know, being sanctioned? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absurd. There's no such thing. And sanctions don't work. Even in South Africa, they didn't work. The reason South Africa collapsed was because they got defeated in the Angolan Civil War. Their military was absolutely destroyed, routed, and suddenly they had to listen to the overwhelming majority black populace.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also want to touch on real quick, what do sanctions do if they don't, which, by the way, Lina, you were describing your relationship with your friend not being able to get money, but let's just say it straight up. What do sanctions do if they don't target Putin or whoever else we're trying to target? What are the results? What happens, say, if the United States does sanction Russia? Which, are we already, did the United States already sanction Russia?
There's multiple, I think 113 articles or something like that. Yeah.
And so what is the result of that going to be? What does that actually look like in actuality? I know the answer, but I'm waiting for someone else to say it.
It's the mass immiseration of the populace.
Yeah.
It hurts the proletariat. It just kills. I mean, it kills them. So I know you were talking before about sanctions killing children. I think you were talking about Iran, was it? With the sanctions that were killing people. If you're
Iraq,
it was Iraq. Excuse me, Iraq.
But sanctions on Iran do kill people. Like
there are sanctions on Iran as well, right?
But yeah, that is what, like, I know it's a little bit off topic from like talking about history, but I just want to say that is the result of this. Sanctioning a country hurts the most vulnerable members of that country, and it's a really sick tactic that liberals seem to like be content with, which is this: no, we're just going to hurt common people the most marginalized, most vulnerable common people, like workers, so hard that they'll end up being so desperate that they'll have to revolt against their leaders. That's like their if you actually explain to them that the sanctions hurt working class people, that's their, if they manage to get that far in the conversation without ducking out, they're going to end up giving that rationale. I want to say that is all disgusting.
It'll be like, next election, they'll be so upset by the sanctions, and next election that comes around, they'll vote them out. That's
oh my God, they'll vote so hard. So
they're
hard.
They're going to vote so hard, and they're going to,
I mean, the Afghan government, too, a bunch of foreign assets got frozen, and now they're not allowed to import food. So now there's a famine in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The US like literally just pulled out, let the government they set up fall, and then is now starving the country.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And it's like, obviously, like the people in charge they're not going to have trouble getting food. You know, it's not them that suffer from this.
They gave half of that money to 9/11 victims, which is the most absurd. It's a literal expropriation of wealth.
Yeah. What was that?
A disgusting one as well.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, sorry, we should carry on.
Yeah.
I was gonna get distracted again.
So now we have this sort of global, unaccountable hegemon who has been like sort of leading the world for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
And this is what Fukuyama described as the end of history. It's just eternal US hegemony.
Hasn't he apologized for that since? And he's been like, oh, actually, maybe history didn't end. It just
but he's never. I mean, what he's describing there is the end of historical materialism. That socialism will never arrive. But also, it's really funny to keep knocking on him for that. You know?
Yeah, it's always good.
And this is like increased tenfold by globalization, by the like forcing of countries to have free trade policies. NAFTA is a net expropriation of labor from Mexico to the US and Canada. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was going to do the same thing.
Yes, that was a huge one for us.
Oh yeah, I remember that going down. Yeah. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was
TPP.
Yeah, wasn't that like something under Obama?
Yeah, it was around then.
Yeah.
And there was huge mobilization against it down here. But it was also like that thing where it's like a lot of same with like the Occupy thing, where it was like there was a good chunk of normal working class people that were against it, and then there was like this fringe of just like weird conspiratorial kind of people. And some of those people that kind of established some level of clout have gone on to like, they were like kind of part of the whole like convoy thing down here and all that kind of stuff. And it's like that danger of people kind of like approaching these things but not having the tools to actually kind of look at it, in the correct way or whatever, to understand the bigger forces at work. They don't understand the situations. They fall into the kind of reactionary traps and all that kind of stuff.
So the reason why, so now we're in this situation. The US is global hegemon. It is the sole imperial power. Let's be real. It is the one.
Yeah.
And it is forcibly opening markets all over the world. It conducted a coup in Bolivia in 2019 to open its lithium reserves. It is just the sole power. So what is the future is the question.
Yeah, well, it kind of seems like that's where it's going to go, because the lithium mines, I might be wrong in this, but I think they're specifically connected to Tesla. And they're connected to like batteries that like Elon Musk and Tesla need to develop like military applications for the US military and stuff.
I more mean, what's the future of the global hegemonic system?
Oh, right. Yeah, sure.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean,
So
I want to read a paragraph real fast. Before we get too far off the Russia topic. Patapatata says, due to the sanctions, a lot of people in Russia cannot get help from the outside. They need the money if they want to protest against the war to be able to pay the bail if they get arrested. They are now unable to send money to their Ukrainian friends. And Ukrainian never had PayPal, but Russia has. Okay. And lastly, there are LGBTQIA plus Russian citizens who need money to flee the country. Sanctions target the most vulnerable, and not only in Russia, but also in Ukraine. Yeah, thank you. That's a good summation and a specific description of like when we talk about targeting the most vulnerable people. Sometimes, it's helpful to go into a specific example of how that actually works, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
100%.
So
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So for the last 30 years, we've lived in a unipolar world. There is one global power that exerts its influence over everyone else. Before then, we had a multipolar world in which there were two powers, one imperial, one not. So now, and we can all recognize that America is in decline. America influence is waning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
everyone here should agree in the
chat.
That's
why Putin's throwing his weight around, right? Because
Putin?
they've not. Now I might be wrong on this because I don't want to be one of those guys who has a take on what's going on and gets it completely wrong. But this is something I heard someone say, is that it's like Russia feels more confident now to do stuff like what they're doing in Ukraine because the sort of like the stuff that America's trying to do with NATO in Europe is like fucking up so bad, basically. Am I wrong in saying that?
It's also because after the fall of Kabul, people realized that NATO's absolute dominance no longer existed. Also NATO was threatening expansion into Ukraine, and that was a red line in Russian geopolitics. They couldn't allow that if they wanted to maintain any sort of regional influence.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
So that was it. That was the spark from the war. It was the fear of NATO expansionism.
Yeah, 100%.
But now, as we move towards the future, we see a rising power in China in terms of economics, in terms of political influence.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see another Cold War with China. We're seeing the beginnings of that.
That's what it feels like. That's absolutely what it feels like.
It feels like they've been banging the war drums, manufacturing consent for a Cold War with China for a while now. Right?
Well, what does that mean?
Exactly.
What does it mean, Cold War with China?
Just sort of and you see this in the rhetoric on China. The rhetoric on China and let's compare the two Chinese Olympics, 2008 and 2022. In 2008, it was a lot about Chinese culture, and there was some mumblings about about what the West saw as state repression, but mostly what it was sort of this view of China opening up, being a free market society. And now in 2022, the U.S. doesn't even participate in the Chinese Olympics. In the 2000s, the difference is in the 2000s, China was liberalizing and becoming part of the U.S. global system. And now it isn't. It's seeing itself as the power that it is. And so the U.S. has changed its tune to inciting opposition to China's influence.
And you're absolutely spot on, Tim. They started manufacturing consent for that as soon as Biden came over to do, I think it was the G7 meeting in the one in Cornwall, the climate summit in Cornwall. And I remember covering that on my channel, and all Biden was talking about was what you were saying before about how they're gonna build infrastructure in Africa, Jack. They're gonna build trains and roads and shit, and we can't have that. It's not fucking
they're framing that as imperialism equal, or as if they don't do, as if they don't have any imperial aspirations themselves, but there's this enemy that is doing it, and that we have to get in there and stop them, which kind of, I guess, is a way to justify their own imperialism, but that's manufacturing consent, right? It's like building up this idea of like something that's going to happen, so we need to do this. So like I'm asking you, the people, for your permission to do this thing, to go out there. And
I think it's also another reason why most of the countries in the imperial core haven't cracked down on conspiracy theorists surrounding COVID. Because a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding COVID, I think a lot of people don't talk about, is that some people, especially like the more, they're majoritively right-wing, but like the more hardcore right-wing ones are still like, well, COVID is real, but it was manufactured in a lab in China. Do you know what I mean? And it's like a legit, and they've not cracked down on that whatsoever. Like that's something that like even US politicians have said, UK politicians have said it as well. So yeah, I think it's important to bring that up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's what we call conspiracy is based mostly on whether or not it's the media narrative. Notice all these like now that China's handled the COVID crisis exceptionally well. There's all this talk, not just from like the media, but also from like the right wing of the current socialist movement, like Vosh and social democrats and stuff, oh, these Chinese COVID numbers are impossible. They clearly are suffering, and it's just censorship.
We got so much of that about New Zealand, but like people saying that it was misreporting or whatever like that. But it's funny because when it's New Zealand, it's a totally different, like the way they frame it is kind of like, like, oh, they must be messing something up, they must be not testing right, they must be all this whatever. Then the same thing with China, except it's like, oh no, they're deliberately lying, or they're withholding information. There's like an evil plot or some shit like that. And it's like so funny how you can see the like the different ways that that our different countries are approached by
and then you see this and then you see the videos of Westerners at the Olympics crying over how harsh the COVID controls are. Like the hazmat suits and the disinfection. And then like, so now you have this like, oh, China has draconian COVID policy that doesn't work, even though if there were anywhere near the amount of deaths that they estimate, you would see it. Like, it's as if people think that Chinese information control is simultaneously extremely porous and extremely absolute.
It's fucking wild. Like I saw a lot of people making statements about about like COVID, like elimination strategies, like the one that New Zealand had or whatever, and they would be posting like simultaneously about like, oh, like New Zealand has a really successful kind of has had a really successful policy on this or whatever, and then they would be talking about another nation. They'd be like, oh well, the authoritarian policies that they would need to put in place to do something like this would just it would be so inhumane, like like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, well, so when New Zealand does it, it's like, oh, it's okay, they're just like, they're standing strong as a nation together or whatever. And then if, like Vietnam does it or whatever like that, it's like authoritarian police state, And not that people didn't say, like, there were people definitely saying that New Zealand was an authoritarian police state because of our lockdowns and stuff, which is actually like fucking hilarious. Like, as someone who actually lived through it, it was like, it was pretty chill. Like, I mean, if that was an authoritarian police state, like, like, it's fine. It's still
this has also been such a handover to China of all things, because Chinese vaccines are being supplied to much of the rest of the world, while Western vaccines are locked behind patents and COVAX.
I think there was a lot of call, especially down here. There was a lot of call for talking about like a like a people's vaccine, like a total like free vaccine sort of thing like that. And I think like that is like one thing that people could have done to really like if we'd done that when it first popped up, the entire it would be a different world right now. Basically,
man, God, I wish we just had a hard lockdown. Like the entire entire world had just had a hard lockdown.
We were talking about that before stream, me and Mule, how it's our first two bouts of coronavirus, where it was like the first kind of COVID-19 thing and then the Delta thing, we had hard lockdowns in New Zealand, and we had barely any cases, and only like you could literally like the case numbers every day you could count on one hand. And then we stopped doing lockdowns for the Omicron one, and kind of did the whole like just get back to work, get on with it sort of thing. And every announcement they kind of roll back protections a little bit further. And now we're getting like there's like thousands and thousands of cases every day. Like it went up from like I think it was like 50 to going to like 200 to 600 to 1,000. Now it's like 12,000, 20,000. It's just like fucking wild. It's like you can see. It's like I wonder what's the difference, right? Like I wonder, between the lockdown to now. It's like what the like I don't know. Like I think a lot of people have kind of like our government handled it really well the first little bit, but a lot of people are saying like, yeah, no, they've totally like dropped the ball at this point,
Yeah, and it's I just said to someone in the chat that our government specifically talking about like a hard lockdown. They of course never wanted to actually impose much lockdown restrictions because the Tories are infamous for wanting to literally just let disabled people die. They do not give a fucking shit if they can get out of paying pensions, disability allowance, anything remotely related to welfare. They will do it. They don't care if people die as a result. They've already been responsible for killing 120,000 people in the last 10 years of government due to and that's not COVID related. That's literally like changing the means testing in getting disability benefits in slight ways that basically meant that like a lot of people killed themselves, a lot of disabled people killed themselves, and a lot of disabled people just fucking died because they couldn't eat
or
and
were
they were made homeless. They were absolutely, they were killed. 100%. Absolutely. The hard lockdown was never going to happen, and it's so ridiculous because it's like, well, you think about the lockdowns that happen, and every fucking middle class white person is like, holy shit, this is the worst thing ever. But the planes were still coming in and out of the country, like
if these like sort of dragged out lockdowns and half measures have inflamed the situation, it's made it worse.
Yes.
Now everyone's mad and they feel like nothing's effective and they feel cooped up and they're losing their mind and they're getting poorer and poorer and more isolated, and then COVID is still happening, very much so.
And then we end up with these like convoys and shit like we had over here and stuff, and it's like these are people that have been radicalized because they've had such a like they feel left out, like it's it's
sorry for the tangent.
This was a bit of a digression. So what does the decline, the age multipolarity, the decline of American power look like? And the answer is, when empires fall, the violence exerted at the imperial periphery against those people at the periphery is imported back into the core. And this has already happened. That's a thing. Israel is the testing hub for suppression of your populace. They test weapons, they test chemical weapons, they test tactics to suppress riots. They train American police officers. A lot of the officers who were deployed during the George Floyd protests in 2020 were trained in Israel.
What?
It's like there's so much so much interchange there. It's fucking wild.
This is a direct import of violence into the United States from its periphery nations.
And of course, that's why the US and a bunch of countries in the imperial core fund the shit out of Israel. Like they what I mean? They know that that's like where they can get away with shit. Like the Palestinian genocide has been like, I hope you don't mind me saying this, by the way, you know more about this than me, Lina, but like, it's like one of the most longest ongoing humanitarian crises in the world. And so they know they can get away with it because it's one of those scenarios where it's just like brown people are the people who are suffering, and no one in the imperial core cares about that. Do you know what I mean?
Have you ever heard of Ida refugee camp? It's in the West Bank. It's near Jerusalem. it is the most tear gas place in the world. Like, tear gas is a type of weather that occurs there.
Yeah, that's fucked.
It's shit like
fucked.
that.
Yeah, I went to I don't know if you heard of this, Lina, but I went to a gallery exhibition about cloud formations. It was here in Manchester, so I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it was
probably not.
Yeah, it was basically like they were talking about how it was basically like, okay, look at all these different types of clouds, and then they were talking about, clouds about climate change, but then they spoke specifically about like white phosphorus in Israel and stuff like that, like these like horrific weapons that Israel is using against Palestinians, and it's just it's just such a absolutely unforgivable fucking war crime, like what's going on
just
there. Like,
imagine if any of you have ever been tear gassed. Imagine how bad that hurts. Imagine chronic exposure.
Yeah,
that it can fuck you up. It's known to fuck you up, right? It's like
it's a known carcinogen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fucking wild. And it's like, I mean, these are fucking war crimes, right? I've noticed this like the whole thing with the Israel army training, like people, whether it's if around the world they do it, like like they have these exchange programs I've heard about in Australia and stuff as well. They teach them like Krav Maga and all that kind of stuff like that. It's kind of like there's also this thing where they like, I mean, I know a lot of people that are like heavily involved in all kinds of like like martial arts and things like that, and they say there's like this thing where it's like this idea that they insinuate that the IDF way is like superior, and that they're like so highly trained, and that like it's an honor to train with them and like learn Krav Maga from them and all this kind of stuff, where it's like it's literally just like not that great or anything like that, and like the training methods are just especially brutal. It's not that these people are like very ridiculously like well trained. It's not that they are like anything like that. It's just like they're extremely brutal, and they have weapons and equipment and stuff that is like far outranks like what the Palestinian people have and stuff. So like, and it's the same with like American police. They get all this like equipment or whatever like that, and they just
it's not just Israel to the United States either, and it's been going on for a very long time. The Korean National Intelligence Services, the NIS, they trained Pinochet security forces.
Yeah.
No fucking way! Holy shit!
It's fucking wild.
This is not a lot of people know about that, but it's completely true.
Yeah,
that is super fucked. Super fucked.
Yeah.
Because it's widely known. Oh, sorry, go on.
I just want to say real quick, thank you, Valmet. Thank you so much for the raid. Valmet L35. Thank you. Hope you had a good stream. Nice. We are right now we're talking with Lina about imperialism, and we're Lina's been kind enough to walk us through like the history of the world essentially. And to teach us about like just to teach us about imperialism, but obviously the topic is very large, so we've been diving into a few little like directions, and so you're catching like the tail end of that conversation. And so in case you're wondering also what this is, I on my channel every Sunday for 3 hours, and you're catching it right now, from 2 p.m. Pacific till about a half hour from now, is a show we call Red Planet, which is hosted by me, Conquest of Dread, DJ Mule, and typically Sophie from Mars, but Sophie can't make it today because Sophie has COVID. So, and then we always have a guest as well. So today's guest is Lina, and it's a thing we are doing once a week. Today's our 10th episode. Maybe we should celebrate. 10 episodes. I don't know. We should probably do something like that sometime.
Oh, yay.
We have talked about doing a little social stream sometime soon. So maybe we can have that kind of like anniversary.
Yeah, but
that's the one.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that after this. But yeah, so welcome to the stream, and thank you so much for raiding. I appreciate it, and I will be thanking all the subs in a few minutes, by the way. And all the donations, so thank you in advance for those contributions, chat. Okay,
so I'd like to move into the final part of what I've got, which is what can we do? The answer is, as an individual, not much. unfortunately. The opposition to imperialism really requires a devoted, disciplined party that can oppose mainstream politics in the United States. And the work of doing anti-imperialism is not only opposing what the government says, our government's actions, but also building that party. So that's what you should do. Yeah, exactly. A party is still made up of individuals. I recommend reading Lenin's What Is to Be Done. I think that's probably the most relevant work in this case.
So yeah, chat, that links into everything that we have been telling you so far on this show. You know, in terms of unionizing, in terms of creating, you know, and joining mutual aid networks, and you know, figuring out, you know, learning protests and figuring out what is safe to do in protests and in riots and stuff like that. All of this comes together in terms of things like this, where like the problem is so big, it demands solidarity on a large scale. So you will see a lot of anti-war protests. They have a lot of union presence sometimes. Like there was an anti-war protest in London today, I think. It might be yesterday, I can't remember. But there were a lot of Communist Party signs, Socialist Party signs, lots of unions were there, lots of you know, foundations like queer and trans foundations, you know, supporting the anti-war message and stuff. So this is the benefit of doing all the things that we've asked you to do so far. Like, these might seem like small things, and they are small things, but in the grander scheme of things, if you build solidarity by you know, doing these small actions, we will create as Mel is saying, like a united front against stuff like this.
Yeah,
it will happen.
Mel says no more doomer posting, no more individualism, united front. I love that.
Yeah, this definitely wasn't intended to be a doomer thing. This was like the necessity.
No, but
of
you
a unified, disciplined party.
You don't want to perpetuate some liberal dream of like, just vote with your dollar and we can all do it. Like, we have to be realistic as to what we are not able to accomplish individually. Yeah. Because if we keep pumping ourselves with hot air with this like these liberal dreams, you just ever need to buy a Prius or something. Like it's not how it works.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So in the absence of a unified, disciplined party, and in the absence of a line to follow and a direction to push, what do we do? Well, again, revolutionary defeatism. Don't advocate against U.S. intervention in the form of sanctions, in the form of supplies, in the form of boots on the ground at all costs.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah, don't be a fucking tattoo artist that says I will no longer tattoo Russian fucking clients. Like,
yeah. That was an interesting one. I was kind of like surprised. I think
I actually haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's super.
The person that posted it, I think, was like an American of Ukrainian descent. So I see that they had like some kind of like personal, like, you know, emotional kind of thing for it or whatever. But it is wild, and we do see like things like that a lot. You know, I've seen people saying similar things about other, you know, when there's something in the news or whatever, like people will try and do this kind of, like, I think I was talking about during the George Floyd riots. There was a guy that said, I will no longer be tattooing chains on people. And, you know, all these like white liberals were like thanking him and being like, thank you for doing the work. Like, thanks for doing the work, King. And it's just like, man, like, this isn't the work. Like, there's people out there doing the work. This does nothing. Like, instead, like, why don't you, like, look at how you can, you know, like, actually support, you know, like, black communities in your area or whatever, like, and actually, you know, like, I don't know, work towards something, like, you know, like, establish mutual aid networks, things like that.
I'm actually glad that you brought that up, Tim, because it reminded me that, like, one day I will forget all of these horrific takes. One day I won't remember them. They'll be out of my brain.
We should have like a book, like, you know, like Baby's First Steps or something. We should be like horrific takes, and we could like review them. Be like, oh my god, that was the take that someone had. Do you remember?
No, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do
that. I mean, that happens, you know, like every now and then it's like we look back and we go like, hey, remember, like, you know, back in the summer of whatever, when everyone on Twitter was obsessed with fucking this thing or whatever.
The book of
no, I would rather endless sunshine of this. I want endless sunshine or whatever it is. Like, just wipe this shit from my brain.
to counter the doomer shit. when Lenin and Liebknecht were arguing, and because it seems a lot that the like actual anti-war people are in the minority here on the left. But remember that Lenin and Liebknecht were also on the left. We're also in the minority. In terms of like most of the left were pro supporting their own nations in this inter-imperial war in World War I. 10 years later, Lenin led the largest socialist entity on the planet, and the pro-war faction of the German Social Democratic Party had regressed completely into liberalism.
I just wanted to point out that I think like we've got someone in the chat, Twinkle, saying, just wondering, is this not some kind of romanticized dream? Humanity is just not the right base to build on. Not trying to be negative, but keep record of what humans actually are, human. And,
well, we did
Wait, it's been done.
Oh, we did? Sorry, I must have missed that, because I'm just like, what the, like, what's, like, that's just such a weird... Anyway,
that's
if you want to lead into that, you can carry on.
That's a take that is not to go too hard on this person, but that's a take that is it's a selfish take. It's the, well, guess I tried, now I'll go back to brunch. It's the take that doesn't have any skin in the game, and it decided...
It's not only that. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, go on.
It shuts down the discussion, right? It's like...
Yeah. And by the way, like, there is plenty of humanity that you are dismissing, and also the conflation of humanity with white oppression, which is mainly
like
what you're talking about.
Kind
like
of
you're dismissing,
whatever, you know,
like the actual like actual indigenous voices are being dismissed right now as being like part of the problem, and that's actually that's not actually true. And so I feel like I understand where people come from when on this angle. They like to. It's hard sometimes to see the world and to have any positivity about it. I understand that, but we also have to understand what kind of horrors we're talking about and how they're not emblematic of humanity, except that humans have in fact committed those atrocities, but that's not what humanity is.
No.
And I would like to think that I am not I would like to think that I am not a person that is consenting to these types of acts. And if that's the case, I think I'm still a human being. I can't imagine that I'm the only one. And again, I will point, I know I already mentioned it, but it is quite offensive to think that like we are now erasing most of humanity, especially marginalized voices who are the victims of these atrocities, and painting them as like part of the problem, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's just like, it's an ideological thing where it's like, you know, like people think that, you know, like when we're talking about like the nature of humanity or whatever like that, what you might think of as the nature of man to be, you know, like to be working against the goals of, you know, like socialism, communism, whatever you want to say, whatever. I think that's, you know, like that being the nature of man is like a recent invention, you know, like that's propaganda. That's, you know, like, and we look at cultures all around the world that have survived.
The humans are
in opposition to that.
The humans are evil mindset is an invention of the modern day. It is. I really like how imperial excuse making has shifted from we are on the righteous side to we are the least evil side. Human nature is evil.
Yeah, like we can't deny our nature, so we have to do it in the least evil way possible or whatever like that. Where it's like, no, like this is, we can deny that is our nature, you know? Like, and I think we have history on our side to prove that it's not. So, yeah.
Anyway, at every point in which there has been, the left is split into pro and anti-war factions. The anti-war faction is the only one which has retained relevance into the future.
True.
Every time.
Yeah.
All these people who are like pro-NATO intervention, pro-NATO. By the way, you should not be pro-NATO. NATO is the imperialist bloc.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like a lot of people say, like, I saw people making statements saying that, like, oh, you know, it's like this isn't a war of imperial powers, because they're making the mistake of comparing, you know, seeing like, you know, like Russia versus like fucking Ukraine or whatever like that. But it's like when people are talking about this, they're not talking about Ukraine as an imperial power. It's NATO and, you know, the US and kind of, you know, like like the Western kind of hegemony, which I know I keep saying, but that's, you know, that's what we're talking about, you know. And I think too, for people to say that it's not is just to just admit like an absolute lack of understanding of what NATO is, how it came about, and like how they have acted in the past, sort of thing.
These people who are pro-NATO are going to be like hard Democrats in 10 years.
Yeah.
Or neocons or whatever else.
By the way, the person that I was just responding to with their it's pointless is now extremely upset with me. So I just want to let everyone know. It's a really healthy reaction. I'm sure this is all very I'm sure it's like a definite solid person who's trying to really put their eye on the prize and really build networks of mutual support and solidarity. It seems like a person who's absolutely in it to win it, and not a person who has had no skin in the game, wants to be a defeatist because they want to go back to brunch, and it's now being very upset because they're being called out for it. But yeah,
and not a revolutionary defeatist, by the way. Just
absolutely not.
Yes, a regular defeatist.
Yeah. I think it's like when if we see something in the chat and we saying, hey, look, this is why this attitude sucks. It's not we don't know you. It's not a personal attack on you. We have no idea about you or what
but the
your
perspective
thing
sucks,
is. Whatever.
And we need to tolerate.
Yeah, exactly. Sucking. So it's like we need to talk about.
We need
that.
to at least talk about why it's problematic. And
exactly. And it's I think it's important to bring this up.
Yeah, Tim, you made a great point in saying you and Bunny as well. I think made this point. I can't remember. I've got ADHD. I don't know if you know. You're silencing indigenous voices. You're silencing a lot of BIPOC voices in saying that humans are basically bad, and that's not to say that the can't be bad BIPOC people, but it's lots of that humans are bad is just things that people take from imperial core countries. Anyway, let's move on. Sorry, Lina.
That is the end of my spiel. We've reached the end.
Let's go. Okay, well, I mean, we're coming up on.
If we want to discuss Ukraine in specific, I guess now is the time. But honestly, I've said what I want to say.
First of all, that was an incredible spiel. The spiel, if you call it that. I loved it.
I don't know.
Great. So I think, you know what? Let's do it right now. Let's do some bun claps in the chat before we move on to anything else. I just want to let's make sure we do that. Chat. Can we get a wall of bun claps? And if you're not a subscriber, bun clap F for followers. Thank you so much, Lina. And that was extraordinarily thorough. And I think I am going to rewatch this VOD to make sure I can digest it all, because I am very naive on most of what you were talking about. And although I was probably put on a certain face, I still have a lot to learn. And so your presence here has made me very aware of how little I know, but also how interesting that, I don't know, I think if we're trying to look to abolish the states and to abolish capitalism, we have to know, and that by extension imperialism, we have to understand how these things arose in the first place and how former systems did collapse as well. Especially when I know that Tim earlier, I think, was talking about the divine right of kings and how that also collapsed. And so I think at the very least, we as leftists or communists or whatever terminology y'all apply to yourselves, should be more well acquainted with that, if only to have better perspective on what those shifts in power look like, and also to kind of poke holes in this idea of American exceptionalism or any form of exceptionalism by any of these oppressive systems, and also to have a better feel for the violence. I mean, there's so many different angles. I guess I can go on and on. I don't want to make this entire my whole spiel, but there's plenty of different avenues that what you were talking about has a million different applications and different ways that it benefits. I think the left movement. So I really appreciate it.
It's not just a line; it's a mode of analysis. You have to apply it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's when you have a proper mode of analysis and this lens that you can look at things through, you'll find a lot of people are oh, I don't know how I should feel about this or that or whatever that, but it's a lot easier to have a consistent worldview and everything like that. Well, the more you know about these things.
100%.
And does chat have any questions? Let me before we even try to get into Ukraine, Russia, because we don't have a lot of time left, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But if anyone has any pressing questions about Russia and Ukraine, with regards to what, because I know that I don't think anyone in this chat necessarily has this perspective, but I know they've run into it, and maybe some people in the chat do have this perspective that they think that the United States, at the very least, needs to do something, or should continue to do the sanctions and stuff, and they feel strongly about this. I don't know if chat, do you feel confident in now being able to explain why it's actually imperialism for America to be involved in Russia, Ukraine? Do you vote the Cheeto out? That's right. Orange Man bad. Yeah, that's the
correct.
Yeah. We're still working on that. All right.
There's a Cheeto in the White House. Boris Johnson, he's a bumbling cockwomble. That'll get him.
I'm okay. Don't worry about it. Good. Yeah.
All right. So we got some yeses coming.
That's good to hear.
Chat is so slow right now.
Chat, wake up! What's going on? Come on, we need you.
I've had a talk with chat the other day about how it's not just my chat; it's just like chats in general. I've heard are becoming like much more. I don't know. Maybe it's just my chat. They're just becoming more.
Chatters, you know what chatters love to do? Chatters love to like say anything, whatever they want, even if it's like talking about things like impossibly pregnant dogs, and just do not respond to streamers. They just don't respond to their streamer.
Impossibly pregnant dogs? Like, wait a minute.
Right.
What is an impossibly pregnant dog?
Like your 101 Dalmatian. She couldn't have possibly given birth to that many dogs. It's impossible.
Really?
It's impossible. There's no way.
Back-to-back pregnancies of litters of a size of what, like 10?
Yeah.
But that's the thing.
I don't know. What's a litter of dogs? I'm just thinking.
They're trying to say it's all 101 at once, and it's just not fair.
Well, no, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
That's
fake news.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like a Bloodborne-esque, you know.
I was going to say it sounded more like some kind of like DeviantArt, Wattpad fanfic situation. But,
right, I've derailed.
Yeah.
What was the question? Okay, chat. To ask chat. Oh my god, chat. I'm asking.
But now they just see. Look, he was right.
I know what? I hate you. Like, never mind.
You know, now it's just like impossibly pregnant dogs. Now that's all
I know how chats work. I've been on Twitch for 6 years. Look it up.
Anyway, I guess I'll answer any questions.
Yeah.
Way to make a good impression, chat. Lina taking
any questions that aren't about dogs
and doing such an amazing job, and you have the audacity to be like, "Wolf's question? Oh, dog vaginas? Yeah, I'll talk about that." Chat. Okay.
Oh god. Right. So, okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
Crimson
Brilliant.
Go.
Great. Thank you.
Great work, Crimson.
I find myself curious about a prior point. Lina alluded to the need to organize into a party and have that party exert influence in order to resist imperialism. Such organization takes time. I'd be curious to hear what Lina thinks about tactics in the interim to move the needle on issues of imperialist power. Lina.
Well, all things take time. That's just the nature of it. But there are anti-imperialist organizations that aren't necessarily in that party form. It's just that in order to solve the problem forever, you need the party. It's the most effective way.
Yeah.
If you look in your community, I don't know what your community is like, but you will probably find something. Some anti-answer coalition or what are they called? Pink something. Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Anti-war organizations are probably not the worst place to start.
Yeah.
Or Code Pink. Code Pink's the one.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's
like the woman one, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, woman led. Woman for peace. That's it. Yep.
And you can certainly check out like there are a lot of like NGOs that do a lot of awareness around anti-war movements as well. Like Amnesty International is one of like the main ones. And you can find out a bunch of information from organizations like that about people that are going to organize in your area regarding anti-war action and stuff?
I would not suggest amnesty. They have like they are not so great.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
There's
Sorry,
like
that's
controversy around that.
That's good information, by the way, to like sometimes because you don't want people to get invested in things.
No. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
DSA-IC and DSA BDS and Palestine Solidarity Caucus are genuinely the best parts of that organization. Genuinely.
All right, yeah.
I say that.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, it's BDS.
I would really recommend Answer Coalition because they are large, they are sizable, and they're like solidly anti-imperialist. Like they use that word.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Let's bring it up. Is that oh yeah, cool. So answercoalition.org. I've got the link here. I'm gonna drop it in the chat. Here we go. So everyone check those, check them out. It looks like they're pretty active all over the place. There's all this stuff here about everywhere from Korea to Ethiopia to to no war with Russia. So that's cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah, great. Awesome, cool. I hadn't actually heard of them, so that's really
cool.
Yeah,
me neither. That's why we got That's why we got you on.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. Have we got anything else coming up in chat? Or
well, we do have to review homework, and then we have to assign homework to chatters.
Lina, have you got any thoughts on what the homework for chat could be?
I have no idea. I was thinking about this, and I don't know.
Well, let's review last week's homework. What was last week's homework, chat? What was last week's homework, chat?
I didn't do this time. I was good.
Homework last week was a lookout for misinformation. That's right. That's right. To look out for misinformation. To look up specifically, was it to look into something that like already has like certain like leanings towards like certain agreements with you, to look out for so keep an eye out for misinformation regarding Russia and Ukraine, especially if it's something particularly catered to your prior convictions.
That's pretty easy. I think most people have been doing that. I think most people
hopefully
in chat.
but like it's especially hard when it's like, oh, that's something that I totally agree with, and so therefore, I think it's true. Yeah. I think it's, that's the way they get you.
Did you fact check it? That's right. That's the key.
So press 1 if you did the homework last week. Press 1 if you did the homework last week. Did you keep an eye out for misinformation regarding Russia and Ukraine, especially if it's something particularly catered to your prior convictions, chat? Press 1 if you did it.
Oh, someone has a question for me, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant. Let's see.
Okay. I'll go back to Toxawall. Toxawall says, question, does the president of Ukraine want them to join EU or NATO? Does he think it's a genuinely good move for them or their only option, perhaps?
He does.
Zelensky, right?
Which, he does. Which is a horrible idea because it just inflames tensions.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't benefit Ukraine.
There's a lot of stuff around the Maidan coup, and we have no time for it, but it's a lot. There's also one from I don't know how to pronounce that, Macchiano.
Macchiano. Just mispronounce names. They're chatters. I do it all the time.
It doesn't matter. Just
they
ask
don't
them
matter. They're insignificant.
Yeah, if they could just type it out.
Yeah. So hang on, where's that question?
They haven't. They just said they had a question.
Oh, come on.
So they're just typing it out now. Okay, let's go. We can give them a second.
Yeah. I have time. It's fine.
So while
are they saying they're saying Talks to Wall had a question? Let's see.
I already read that one.
We read that.
Oh, already have. Oh, okay.
Machiano Talks to Wall's question.
Oh, right.
Chat.
Okay,
cool. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna have words
after
the show's over, chat. We're gonna have words after the show's over.
Chat's in trouble.
Samurai, you can follow me at Lina Posting on Twitter.
Nice.
Oh no, she's gonna yell at us. Oh no. Okay, well, let's assign homework for next week. And how about this? So anti-imperialism. What would be good homework? This is a tough one.
I would say research in your area an anti-war organization, like maybe a local one. Maybe try and find a local one, because these things you I guess are easier to organize if they're local. They're easier to sort of like join as well. I would definitely say like the Answer Coalition is probably like, yeah, just like, you know, sign up to the newsletter and stuff like that regarding you know, with that organization, but also look for stuff in the locally. I don't know how everybody feels about that.
Everyone in chat, like, there's a bunch of people just saying Parenti video, yellow Parenti.
Just watch Parenti.
Yeah, I think like that's a really good.
I've never watched Parenti, the whole thing. I've never
the yellow
done
video.
it.
I mean, like,
I've seen you watch it.
I've watched parts of it. I've never watched the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Like Parenti has like good takes and bad. There's like, you know, whatever. But I think that yellow video is a really good.
No,
yeah.
Any bad takes?
No. Like there's still a lot to learn from him. But I think that yellow video in particular is a really good primer for imperialism and stuff. Oh, I love there's like the actual yellow Parenti emotes that people have. Yeah. So I would say, like, I mean, if anyone watching wants to like get another kind of perspective, a similar perspective, but hear it in another way, look up yellow Parenti on YouTube and you know.
And there's one video that has a really annoying like buzzing in it. You don't have to watch that one. That's a mess up. Just find a video without the buzzing. You don't have to like. It's not. That's like that one recording's problem. So
I don't. I don't think the yellow video has any of Parenti's bad takes in it, as far as I know.
Oh no. That's like, I think that's a really good.
The yellow video is based. Just watch the yellow video for sure. Yeah. But what do we think?
So Frezzo is saying, here's an alternative in the union or the organization or union that chatters join in week 1. See if they have an anti-war committee or any anti-war sentiments in their bylaws or similar.
That's a great one, and that means that they have to.
There's like so many different. You can either join an anti-war group, or you can check to see in your union if they have anti-war rhetoric, or you can watch yellow Parenti video. These are three options for homework.
If there's an anti-war protest near you, you should join if you have time.
That's a good idea. I've been to anti-war protests. Yes. I've been to 2.
Well done.
That's right.
Well, you've been to 2.
2 about the same war, but you know what? Double 2. What?
That is double. Do you want to know a funny story about me, my history? When I was 12 years old, I took a penknife to school and cut open the chain link fence with like a file or some shit. I can't remember how I did it. I think I had like scissors on it or something, so that me and my classmates could go out and protest the Iraq War. But they all got out, and I got caught. And
sacrifice for the comrades.
Yeah, Mr. Amuzu put me
little
in detention.
based baby mule.
Yeah, I know, it was really sad.
yeah. That's actually like that's cool though. If you were like just a kid doing that shit, that rules.
Yeah, it just seemed right. Do you know what I mean? It's like it seemed like I guess I was like pretty lucky to go to a school with like a lot of people who you know, had ancestry in the Middle East, like, you know, the basically sort of like, you know, relatives and stuff like that living in various areas of the Middle East. So like there was a lot of awareness in my school about it. So it was just like, yeah, fuck that. Like they're just gonna go and bomb a bunch of people, like, you know what I mean? That like literally my classmate knows, like, it's absurd.
Yeah. Totally. It brings it home, right?
I'm trying to write out the homework. It's very long. All right, that should be, hopefully it fits. There's 3 different options and maybe even a 4th. I forgot what it was. Anyways, all right, chat. Well, how about we give one big final round of applause to Lina for joining us and the fantastic job she did. Thank you, Lina. And also for our gracious, beautiful co-host, DJ Mule and Conquest of Dread. And let's have Lina shout yourself out, and then Mule, and then Tim, and then I will hang out with the chat and talk to them.
My Twitter is twitter.com/Lina posting. That's Lina with an I. People keep spelling it with an E for some reason. That's pretty much it.
Sweet. Awesome. Lina posting. It's very easy to remember. I'm gonna just follow you right now.
Yeah.
Some people posted it in chat already, which is great.
There you go. Yeah, Sky Solo posted it in chat.
Cool.
Me, I'm DJ Mule. You can find me on twitch.tv/DJ Mule, where at the moment I am streaming Elden Ring, and that's it. I'm only streaming Elden Ring. That's all I'm doing. My politics is literally just me coming on here. I come on here every week and do my politics stuff now. But yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I post all sorts of random stuff on at DJ Mule _ on Twitter. I also have a YouTube channel, and yeah, I know I said I was making a video. I definitely don't have time to do that at the moment, so yeah.
You're too busy doing important things like Elden Ring every day.
yeah, totally right.
It's no time for videos.
Yeah, right. Let's move on.
Cool.
Tim,
and when are you streaming next? Mule, when are you streaming?
Oh, I'm streaming tomorrow as early as humanly possible.
All right, so go to early morning tomorrow. Go to Mule. He lives in England, so that's an early for the England.
No, it won't be that early. It'll be
okay, so early, like 10 a.m.
5 p.m. Yeah, 5 p.m.
All right, fucking never mind. Okay, Conquest of Dread.
So I'm Tim on YouTube and Twitch. I'm Conquest of Dread. On YouTube, I've got like video essays and stuff. On Twitch, I mainly play games, but we talk a little bit of political stuff as we play. At the moment, I'm also playing a lot of Elden Ring. And I might be on late tonight. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. And on Twitter, I'm Dread Conquest. So. Yeah, and you can find me over there. Mainly, I just like shit post over there, but you will see me posting a lot about political stuff, much in line with what we talk about here. So, if you're not following me in all those places, go ahead and do it. Whatever. I don't know. I'm not the boss of you. We're all equals here.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's it. Cool. Awesome. Well, I think then Bad Bunny is gonna take over and do all the little shout outs and thank yous for everyone that's come along.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that everything?
Cool. Yeah, it's everything. Well, go ahead.
Ooh, Lina?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for having me.
Oh, my God.
It's
our pleasure.
Thank you for coming along.
Yeah, you're wonderful.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
cool.
You've definitely enlightened me. And yeah, it was very, very good. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, see y'all next week.
Take it easy.
Cool.
Alrighty. Now, chat. Now it's just you and me. You don't have anyone else to save you. Just the two of us. Let's talk.
you cannot see.